bombing schools. I'm covering this. I know this is happening. And, I remember on even Meet the Press when David Gregory used to host it, there was that guy literally crying because they were bombing schools and they wouldn't stop. They were calling the military leaders, please don't bomb this school. Please. And then they did it anyway.
Yeah, they kept bombing these UN schools that were used to house people in the Gaza Strip. Gaza Strip is one of the most densely populated places on earth. And in 2014, when Israel was bombing the areas along the buffer zone, which are heavily populated, to ruins with 155-pound U.S. supplied howitzers, with 2,000-pound, 500-pound bombs. I went to these areas and just found shrapnel everywhere among the destroyed homes. People had to evacuate, so they went to UN schools, and then the UN schools were getting bombed left and right, and there were casualties. But I mean, Bobby goes on to say that Israel only attacks military targets. That's not what Israel says. That's not what the general staff of Israel's military high command says. The former chief of staff of the Israeli military, Gadi Eisenkot, conceived a doctrine called the Dahiyya Doctrine. It's named after a southern Beirut majority Shia neighborhood that Israel destroyed, leveled to the ground in 2006 in its failed war against Lebanon, and specifically against Hezbollah. And the point of this doctrine is that you don't attack the military targets, you attack the popular base of the political force that you aim to destroy in hopes of demoralizing that population so that they will turn against their leadership. It's sort of like sanctions, but with bombs. And that's why you see Israel destroying during military escalations entire neighborhoods. It's according to that doctrine. The Israeli military, and if you're watching this now, just Google mowing the lawn Israel or mowing the lawn Gaza. Israeli military commanders call it mowing the lawn, something they have to do every few years against the population of Gaza or southern Lebanon, cutting the grass down to size so that they don't grow up and resist Israel.
Okay.
And they were hanging gays from cherry pickers.
So he's doing
Wait a minute.
He's doing in Iran at the same time in Iran as they were having gay pride parades in Israel. They were hanging them in Iran. Go ahead.
I mean, it's like every few seconds we have to stop it.
I know it's not good.
Okay. Not to say Iran is some like progressive LGBTQ IAA 2SS plus paradise. Okay. I'm not saying that, but he's saying at the same time Iran was hanging gays, like masses of gays from cherry pickers. Maybe I missed the news, but this seems kind of like a exaggeration.
Again, the reason why there's a theocratic government in Iran is because the same CIA that killed his father and his uncle overthrew their democratically elected government so we could steal their oil.
And he knows that.
And that's why the people of Iran have to live with that government. That's why. Okay.
Place where women have full rights. It's the only place where Palestinians can legally complain about their government with no fear of reprisals. Anywhere else, including the West Bank, if you complain about extremely corrupt governments in the West Bank or Gaza,
So when he says that there's extremely corrupt governments in Gaza, that's like saying that the prison gang is corrupt, because Gaza is a prison, and you can't not let people travel. You can't refuse people the right of travel. And that makes that a prison. And then you can't bomb a prison, no matter how bad the people in the prison are. You can't bomb a prison. Okay, and which I said that, but he talked over me when I was saying that. But so now go ahead. What would you like to say, Max?
Well, exactly. I mean, he's using the repression, such as it is, of the Hamas authorities in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority, which is funded by the United States in the West Bank, to justify occupation, while denying that the occupation even exists. But right now, as we speak, there are protests in the Gaza Strip. Yeah. People are demanding better services from the Hamas ruling government. They're not being shot and killed in the streets there. Not everyone dies if they protest or criticize their government. However, they are repressive governments, and they're repressive by design, particularly the Palestinian Authority, which was designed by the United States according to the Oslo Accords and is funded to be repressive so that it arrests Palestinians and prevents them from resisting their occupier, their dispossessor. So and then if you, as a Palestinian, attempt to resist the occupation in the West Bank, you will be shot by Israel. I've seen it in villages like Nabi Salah, in villages like Belin or Na'alin, which are small farming villages that exist along the line of the apartheid wall. These farmers and families who've been cut off from their own land by a wall went out and protested the military without weapons, and they were shot by rubber-coated steel bullets, tear gas, skunk water. I've watched their homes sprayed with this toxic skunk water, and some of them have been killed with live fire, and at night the Israeli military would come in and arrest them in their beds, including arresting small children in their beds of these villages. So Israel is the ultimate repressive force, and it essentially controls what happens with the Palestinian Authority. The reason people voted for Hamas in the first place was because they were willing to resist, and they were seen as less corrupt than the Palestinian Authority.
Okay. Risk your life, and you'll face torture and death. So, the judiciary in Israel is unique in the world. It's also said you can't pressure people putting pressure on their family. You can't pressure terrorists in that way at all.
I have a feeling that happens all the time, though. I mean, again,
but you can go to jail for it.
But I'm not. You're right. But I'm not I'm not an expert.
And you can sue people.
Okay. So, Max, was I correct that they pressure people? That what he said that doesn't happen happens all the time. Was I correct or wrong?
What was he saying doesn't happen?
That the judiciary in Israel says you can't pressure people. You can't pressure the families of terrorists and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. If you're deemed a quote unquote terrorist, which means if you engage in armed activity in the West Bank against, for example, the Israeli military or settlers, Israel will demolish your family's home. They do it again and again. They blow up homes. They do it in occupied East Jerusalem and Silwan as well. There's no doubt about that. Israel doesn't deny that they do that. It's textbook collective punishment. And then they also destroy communities and families by recruiting collaborators using, trying to blackmail them and pressure them in order to collaborate with the Israeli authorities. If they find out, for example, that they're,
so that would be like if somebody committed a terrorist act, like Timothy McVeigh, let's just say the worst terrorist in American history. And that would be like if we went to his house and then crushed his house where his parents and brothers and sisters lived. That's what they do in Israel. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, and this isn't people who've been blowing up federal.
No, I know. That's why I'm using an gross example. We wouldn't even do that in the United States. We wouldn't go to Timothy McVeigh's house and crush it with his family inside of it because he did something so terrific. But you're saying they do that all the time, and that's their policy, actually.
Yeah, there's another film I would recommend to Robert Kennedy Jr. called Arna's Children. It's about a woman named Arna Meyer, who's a Jewish woman who had a mixed Jewish-Palestinian son. She died of cancer after starting a theater in Jenin, an occupied Palestinian city with a refugee camp filled with people who have been dispossessed by Israel. And she started a theater for the youth there. And her son, Giuliano, took over that theater after she died of cancer. And during the Second Intifada, the theater was destroyed by Israeli bulldozers along with much of the refugee camp. And the youth, many of the youth who are in the theater programs, and the theater is still active, by the way, they participated in armed activity. They battled Israeli soldiers in the streets of Jenin. And it profiles some of these youth, and they explain why they picked up the gun. And many of them had already had their homes demolished by Israel. That's why they did it. Imagine just having your family home destroyed by a foreign occupying army. How would you feel?
Right. I know. Okay, let's see what else.
Every year now we give 2.3 billion to Egypt, which has no human rights, and we give $1 billion to Jordan, which has no human rights, and we give 800 million a year to the Palestinian Authority, which uses that money to pay bounties to Palestinians who kill Jews, not government officials.
Now, tell me, that hasn't happened for 15 years, right?
Well, it's just a straight up lie in the first place. The Palestinian Authority coordinates directly with the Israeli military. Do you think the Israeli military would coordinate with them, or Congress would fund them if that was happening? And he goes on to say it's any Jew anywhere in the world. I mean, I've lived for months under the Palestinian Authority in places like Ramallah. No one cared if I was a Jew. No one's running around hunting Jews anywhere and getting money from the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority is there to arrest Palestinians and provide a pseudo government for Palestinians so Israel doesn't have to take on the responsibilities of occupation. He's just completely making that up out of whole cloth. And he doesn't seem to understand that Egypt gets that 2.5 billion or so from the US as part of the Camp David deal so that it represses its own citizens who would like to resist Israel and would like to defend Palestinians from Israeli violence.
Welcome to a special edition of the Nick and CJ Show. I'm one of your hosts. I'm CJ. What's up, Nick?
What's poppin', my friends, my family? It's great. It's great to be back on Nick and CJ. It's great to be back on RBN. I hope you guys caught up on the Labor Summit. We gave you some time to catch up a bit. But now we're back to produce banger, after banger after banger. Once again, and we got a great one for you guys. We got one of my favorite guests to have on, RBN family, RBN friend Margaret Kimberley from Black Agenda Report, who's probably one of the best guests we can have right now, considering the situation in Niger. But regarding, I want to quickly add my comments to the Jimmy. I have another clip to share.
Okay. I'll take it down. I can take it down. Okay. I'll put it up, but go ahead.
Either way, we got a lot to cover today. Man, there's a lot to cover today, especially with Margaret coming later. RFK and his campaign really don't realize how much they fucked up. And on Wednesday, I'm going to have Craig Pasta from the Combo Couch on.
Uh-oh.
We're gonna call it. I like Craig. We friends. Like we're friends. Like we agree on a lot of things. But the RFK thing really upset him because this is not new to me. This is not my first rodeo, I should say, because I make people mad all the time for criticizing politicians. They that's my thing. So I've been asking for debates literally all year. I called the Vanguard. They ducked that. They're like, I'll rather debate Cal and Vosh instead. I called out Sam Cedar. I called out Emma. I called out countless people this year. And we in August of this year, CJ, 8 months in, just now got a debate. And I'm calling it a debate because I'm like, because me and Pasta, when I have Pasta on, because we're friends, we agree on one thing, we lean towards the agreement. This time, we're leaning towards the disagreement. So we're still going to be friends. We're not going to be yelling at each other. It's going to be one of the things let's find our disagreements. Let's talk about that. And that's Wednesday. And props to Pasta because it took 8 months. See, at the beginning of the month, I went around 2, maybe 3 debates. Can't find one. I've been you see me on Twitter. I've been talking shit. Took me 8 months. The Hill was they got to bring him back. We got to save Robbie. Fuck that nigga. We can't have Robbie go up against Nick no more. So
maybe you can get the Vanguard. They just have Vosh. We'll cover that in a quick segment later on today.
I'm
gonna come back in 30 seconds. 30 seconds. I'll come back. You can go. I can hear you through my other phone, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. What the funny thing is, I'm gonna talk about the Jimmy clip because once again, props to Pasta. He coming on Wednesday, and we talk about disagreements about RFK because I've been going really hard on RFK, and I don't know why people are confused. I don't know why people are confused that I'm dragging RFK. You guys realized that I dragged Marianne Williamson through the fucking coal. I destroyed Marianne Williamson for her Zionist takes. RFK takes on Israel is worse than Marianne Williamson.
Yeah, worse.
Marianne Williamson is the PEP. The PEP is the progressive accept Palestine. Correct? So she say stuff like, yeah, she still believe that Israel should exist as a state. She disagreed with methods of resistance regarding the Israeli state, like BDS, rejecting the Iron Dome funding, etc., etc. This take is what made us call her Zionist, because she support the existence of the Israeli apartheid state. I don't care if you say nice things about Palestinians on the way out. Yeah, I think our apartheid should be a little more gentler. You support a state that is proven to be a genocidal apartheid state. The left position in that state should not exist. That state should not exist. And I see people, they say, oh, well, Nick, what are you saying? You're saying the Jews don't deserve a homeland? If you don't have a homeland that does not exist without genocide and apartheid, you don't deserve it. It's just simple as that. You don't have a state without apartheid, without genocide, you don't deserve a fucking state. How is that a hard thing to acknowledge? Now, so Marianne's position is that, and we criticize her for that. RFK is a worse on every level than Marianne Williamson on this issue, because he doesn't even do the thing where he said, well, Israel should be better than Palestinians. His statement is that Israel is correct in their treatment of Palestinians. In fact, they are grateful to the Palestinians because the Palestinians are terrorists and they are thugs. You guys understand? That's way worse than Marianne. That's way worse than Bernie. That's why I don't understand why Pasta, who's critical of Marianne and Bernie, is okay with this guy who has unhinged. He's running a smear campaign against the Palestinian people. A smear campaign, calling them terrorists and thugs, and they deserve to live in the open air prison that they get bombed every once in a while. You guys know that's what he's saying? He's palling around with some of the most extreme genocide enablers you can find. All these insane rabbis, all these insane Zionists.
I don't even know where does he find these rabbis that he's talking to? Like, geez.
He's deep in the community. He's deep in the community. That's why when his instinct was say, yeah, I want to debate Max. And then his Zionist community said, no, hell no, don't do that. Get the fuck over here. And he's like, okay, I guess I'll get over there. I wasn't given permission by the AIPAC lobby to debate him, so I'm not going to do it. So, and you want to know what the greatest irony is? You got a lot of these anti-woke people who support RFK Jr. He's a woke imperialist. You guys know RFK Jr. is a woke imperialist. Have you guys heard his justification for why he supported the apartheid state of Israel? CJ, have you heard it? He said, well, Israel is a great bastion of democracy. He said, Israel, and remember, he said, Israel treats gay people better than the Palestinians. So he's a woke imperialist. He's using woke politics, liberal politics, in order to justify apartheid. So all the right wingers who like RFK, I can't wait for you guys to realize that he's using woke imperialist talking points in order to justify why he hates the Palestinians. He's like, oh my God, the Palestinians don't like gay people? He said that before. He was like, well, the Palestinians, they don't have a liberal democracy, so we should drop bombs on Gaza. Like
him and Marianne Williamson are more alike than we think, because she said something similar, I think, about Iran and the women in Iran, something similar to that effect. It's absurd. But did you get a chance to actually watch the clip, the Jimmy clip with him? Have you seen it before we played it today?
No, that's the first time I've seen one clip that I saw before the show. I didn't get a chance to watch I haven't been watching a lot of independent media recently, so I haven't had a chance to really peep that out. I'm waiting for the debate. I'm waiting for if they ever do one. I don't think they're going to do one.
But I don't think they're going to do one.
But we can play more of the clip if you want, because I haven't seen it at all. I have a clip play, but you may play it. So I would, if you want, CJ, we can cover more.
Yeah, I can play it. So my video plays fine, but you might see me, the audience, not you, Nick. People in the audience may see me like buffering, but the video plays fine.
And as you put a video up, I want you guys to understand. RFK keeps saying Israel is this great bastion of democracy. Essentially, he's a woke imperialist. He agrees with the culture of the state, so he believes the state can do what they want. By the way, Israel just bombed the capital of Syria. Let me share my screen, because actually I meant to.
Go ahead.
So we get back to this here soon. So this is what Israel is doing as RFK is shilling for them. So people believe he's anti-empire? The fuck you mean? You cannot be anti-empire while being a puppet of the Israeli state. And this is what I want to discuss. I want to see if Pasta knows something I don't. I'm not coming into this debate hostile. I just want to ask you questions, bro. Like, how does it make sense for you to be the anti-empire candidate when you literally gargle and bullshit for the Israeli state that is bombing Syria?
Right.
You have Israel that is commanding Biden, and Biden, Anthony Blinken is listening, to have a double down hardline stance against Iran, the same policy that Donald Trump had. The same policy that Donald Trump had that liberals criticized, the hardline stance against Iran, pointing out Iran deal, and he had Biden that said he was going to get back in, and then he lied, and then he doubled down on Biden's policy. You know why on Trump's policy? You want to know why he did that? Because they're all puppets to Israel. So if RFK becomes president, guess what his Iran policy, CJ, is going to be? You think he's gonna buck? No, and not only that he's not going to buck Israel on that, he already said he sounds more unhinged than Biden. He's more unhinged on Biden than Israel. We covered this before. Where he said absolutely not, no negotiation, no Iran deal. We need to put maximum pressure on Iran. And meanwhile, everyone else, these people with blinders on, because the only issue they care about COVID, because that's the first time they've been oppressed. The first time was because of COVID. And now because
hold on, Nick. Hold on. Because the reason I laugh is because that description, that phrase you just used, is what I've been trying to articulate all this time, and you just summed that shit up. It's the first time a certain segment of people have had repressive or oppressive sort of things put upon them. That's why that's their freaking hill to die. That's just freaking opened my eyes. That perfectly.
So, CJ, believe it or not, I actually got from you. Like, that's just my phrasing of it. My phrasing of it is the idea. Y'all do shows CJ all the time. He influenced me, so that's just my way of framing it. And that's once again, I'm ask Pasta these questions in a very kind way. Like Dr. Cornel West said on your show, brother, that he don't support mandates. And I'm asking the chat this question. What other question regarding COVID matter other than that? If you're not forcing if the government is not forcing someone to take the vaccine, nothing else fucking matters to me.
It's nothing else matters.
Nothing else fucking matters.
Okay, now we can't. Yeah, I don't want to get, but if you don't take the thing and you're not mandated, you see how what's in the thing doesn't matter anymore. You see how what the company put in the thing doesn't matter if now you don't have to take it. So if you think it's BS, you just don't. You get it? So
I'm
saying word, but go ahead.
They keep saying, and people say, Dr. Cornel West is weak on COVID. How? I don't care. I don't care if you took the vax or not. Why should anyone care? Why should anyone care? I'm not vaccinated. No one gives a shit. Why should that be a give or take? The only thing that fucking matters to me is, are you going to use the power of the state to mandate people to take the vaccination? And he said on Pasta's show, that's the funny thing. On his show, he says he's against mandates, and he still pretends that Dr. Cornel West is bad on COVID. So I just want to ask him about that. To me, that doesn't make sense. To me, supporting the state that bombs Syria is a way bigger offense. To me, that's a way bigger offense.
And I'm interested. You know I'm sure you're going to get to this because he's one of his main sort of attack lines is that you are a single issue voter or you're a single policy person if your line in the sand is Israel. And that to me is such a gross underrepresentation of what's happening in Palestine. That is such a gross underrepresentation of what is actually going on there. And so I just wanted to insert that. So I'm curious. That's the part I'm listening for. Whenever
and that's what we're gonna talk about a lot of stuff, but usually when me and Pasta have conversations, we lean towards the agreements, then we go disagreements later. This time, disagreements first. let's get all the disagreements out of the way, and then we have some shit we agree on. We go after that later. I want you guys to know I like and respect Pasta. I had a great relationship with Pasta for a while. I'm not gonna allow one thing that we disagree with, and we talked about it before. Like me and Pasta are hot-headed, so you guys see we went to war on the timeline on Twitter a few times. But then we passionate about what we believe, and not anything personal, right? So I want to have a conversation. He's the only one brave enough. Like, because I had a lot of these beef publicly with these people on Twitter. Then I'm like, hey, you want to talk about? Oh, fuck that shit. At least Pasta wanted to come on. So
you know why, Nick? It's such a thing. It's such a thing in people of color's neighborhoods to talk like that and argue with such passion and it's
We
not
did it
at
all the
all
time.
me. We do it all. You go to a black barbershop, and I've been in like I was down wherever I was in a Latin barbershop. It was the same thing, passionate arguing. Then and when it was over, they was like gave each other dap. All right, see you guys
Yeah,
next
that's
week.
all it is.
You know what I'm saying? Like that was it. It was about
TJ, that's
sports
such a
at
great
that
point.
time.
If you mind me to chime in here, because there's so many,
Yeah, go ahead.
especially white leftist bourgeoisie people that is very shocked on how RBN operates. Like, very, I can't believe you said this about we prayed for you. How many times we had one criticism, people freak out. People don't understand. It's a different culture than how you probably grew up. Cause me and my brothers, we yell, we fight all the time. We were brothers in a few hours. We have strong, passionate disagreements because we strongly believe in what we say, and that would. And Pasta is just like me. Like you guys see, guys know Pasta's personality. We type of people that fucking when we have strong disagreements, fight, but it's nothing personal. People and then people type me like, "Man, you okay with Pasta? What's going on with you and Pasta?" I'm like, we had a disagreement. We fight hard. We fight hard, and that's how barbershop conversation generally is. That's how our community usually are. When you in outside of the black bourgeoisie, because that shit less susceptible. In the black bourgeoisie, there's more civility politics intertwined with that. But among the black working class, the barbershop style conversations, we said what we had many conversations among us on RBN when things get hit, and we like, yo, that's just how we feel. You know what I mean? That's how we do. But anyway, we can get to the video. I think we made our point. Because there's a lot to say, and I think two clips. I didn't see the whole segment, but the two clips I did see, man, RFK got dismantled. So that's why I'm interested to see more of the video. We can always cover other topics the other day, but like you guys know, we back, so we can always cover stuff later. So I actually want CJ, if you don't mind, I actually am curious to see a little bit more of this. We don't have to watch
we can play. Yeah, we
and then I have
another
another quick story before Mark comes. As well. So let's proceed. Maybe another 5-10 minutes video time, but we play by ear. Let's go ahead, CJ.
Yeah, we'll be good. And just let me know when you stop.
Same with Jordan, which has a majority of Palestinian citizens. Those countries are paid by the U.S. to be repressive to their own citizens. The Palestinian Authority, I mean, he's just making that up. And it's a slander of Palestinians to say that.
Exactly.
I
heard something. On that point, I'll be quick. I'll be very quick here. Like, I had a Palestinian community networker. They set me up with so many great people for the community. We just had another great leader that was on during the Labor Summit when we had the Palestinian Community Network on. I have a lot of mutuals, a lot of Palestinian people I know in my personal life. And that's why I was telling Marianne, like, bro, I don't know who the fuck you talking to because what you say make no sense based on my personal conversation and experience. And based on what my experience is, it's clear that RFK is smearing the Palestinian people. And he does it in the most malicious way. And this is why so many right-wingers like him now, because so many of these white right-wingers, they hear someone drag Muslim Palestinian name in the mud, and they like, oh, we all for this shit. We all for this shit. It's he engaging in tribalism. I see Gamer. I just saw this term. It's terrible. And because he does the same thing that I call out that Zionists do, where they try to make it a religious war. You gotta see they hate Jews. They just want to attack Jews. No, they hate settler colonialists. He's trying to make it a race war. He's trying to make people think that the Palestinian has dirty, disgusting culture. No, the issue is settler colonialism. And when RFK Jr. talk about this issue, it's clear he's trying to obfuscate that. But anyway, I'll let it continue. I made my point.
You go to Israel, and if you kill a Jew anywhere in the world, and you're a Palestinian,
anywhere in the world,
the Palestinian Authority will pay you money for that. And
that's just a flat out lie, Max.
It's a flat out, complete, and total lie.
So when someone says a lie,
I can't.
And I'm gonna let it play because this point is gonna continue throughout this whole video. So I'm not gonna get out of the way early. When someone lies about stuff that is so easily disprovable, like this quote, and when RFK said that Israeli soldiers do not target civilians. I mean, like, these are not like, oh, it's up in the air, it's a debate. No, these are easily disprovable stuff that you will see on fucking Google in the first two searches. That is false. So the people who still support RFK, like Pasta, and I want to ask them this, don't you understand he hurts your guys' credibility on other issues? Because as someone who don't know that much about public health and vaccines, now I'm like, are you tricking me on shit? Because I don't know. I can't fact check you guys see it in credibility of the entire movement, having this fucking lying psychopath be the head of it. How many people like Keaton says, from due distance. How many people signed the Great Barrington Declaration? And you gotta choose this fucking Zionist crackpot? Anyway, let's continue.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good look, and it doesn't bode well for vaccinations. The people who are on his side about that, it just makes it go, well, if he's this off on this,
yeah,
I wonder. You get what I'm saying? So both can be true, but let's
CJ, remember, CJ, I wanted RFK to debate Peter Hotez. Remember? I said I want more of those debates to help people like me out, who like I side more about questioning the establishment. I'm skeptical of these motherfuckers, but I would love to see these people debate so I can learn. So I'm like, I can't even have RFK be that representative of that because I don't know if you're bullshitting. And if you are bullshitting, you will make that movement look bad. Like, why is he the guy you guys want to pick? But anyway, let's continue.
I can't wait to hear him answer that to you. What then?
So he's saying U.S. taxpayer money is used to pay bounties to kill Jews anywhere in the world. I mean, that's just bonkers.
Because we fund, okay.
And they will.
I don't know enough to push back on this. Jesus
so I know. I think there's this narrative, and particularly on the liberal left, that says that that portrays Israel as a kind of occupying nation.
I can't even to say kind of. We don't.
He's saying it's
kind of. It's 100%. What are you talking about? They don't have the freedom of movement. So that's the thing, right? So I wish I would have said this, that the people who are in control of the situation, they have the greater moral responsibility. The people who they're controlling don't. The people are the prison guards have a greater moral responsibility. The warden has a greater moral responsibility to take care of those people than those people do at all. So that's the part I think he's totally missing, because he keeps pretending that it's not an occupied state. It 100% is. And
it's just a left-wing narrative.
That's not a left-wing narrative. That's every human rights organization in the world.
It's the United Nations Security Council Resolution 242.
And he would say that's because they're anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
On Palestinian land, and the whole thing is a lie from start to bottom. And let me just tell you a little bit about the history.
Okay, here we go.
Israel is a kind of occupying nation sitting on a Palestinian land, and the whole thing is a lie from start to bottom. And let me just tell you a little bit about the history. Israel and Jordan were part of what was called the British Mandate when the Ottoman Empire, in 1922, when the Ottoman Empire collapsed after World War I. We went to war. The Palestinians were on the side of the Ottoman Empire against the Allies. The Jews were on our side. There were more Jews in Palestine at that time than there were.
Wait a minute, stop. First of all, that's totally false that there were more Jews inside Palestine at that time than there were Arabs. That's why there was the Arab revolt, because the Peel
RFK overwhelms you with bullshit.
Yeah, that is the tactic.
And that's what Jimmy was saying afterwards. He was like, man, he really overwhelmed me with his bullshit. So even in those bills of lies, to be honest, I didn't even catch that lie. Like, there's so much. I'm like, holy shit, saying this. He's slipping in lies. He's an expert at this. He's a lawyer for a reason, guys.
You know who else does this? Donald Trump overwhelms you with a bunch of stuff so you don't know how to attack. And you know who else wrote a book on this? And this is what he did to Matt Taibbi? Mehdi Hassan.
Yeah,
they
I remember
overwhelm you with just garbage. So it's like, I don't even know what to attack here. I'm so overwhelmed by just nonsense stuff that I haven't even ever heard of.
Yeah, that was like when I talked to Vosh a long time ago. It's like, what? It's like, nigga, what? And I wasn't that seasoned back then too, so I was like, what did you say? Like, I couldn't even comprehend the CIA liberal bullshit coming out of his mouth. But anyway, let's continue.
Peel Commission was giving the Jewish population, or allotting the Jewish population ports and better land and more land while they were in the minority. It's why Israel couldn't accept Resolution 181 and had to initiate ethnic cleansing, because the populations were so similar in the territory that was partitioned for a future Israel. And then it wouldn't have been a Jewish state, and the Arab population the Palestinian population could have potentially elected a Palestinian prime minister. So they had to forcibly eject them. Then he completely leaves out the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which was a straightforward colonial plan to give the Palestine to the British Mandate. This was in 1916. And he seems to be justifying the occupation on the basis that Palestinians fought on the wrong side in World War I, on the side of the Ottomans, when they didn't have a choice to live under the Ottoman Empire or not. And who says that?
He is such a product of American history, just fantasy and lies put together. Like, this is what he does. It's part fantasy, part lies. And this is the reason why, Nick, I think he's never going to debate him, because Max Blumenthal is literally bringing up names of accords I've never even heard of. He's bringing up agreements between countries and stuff. He's bringing up actual government documentation of events that he's not going to be able to dispute. Like, it's nothing. A person who lies it looks at a person like him and be like, I'm not debating that motherfucker right there. Like, when people like Vanguard look at you, they go, have you seen Nick debate? You think have you seen our content, sir? You must not have seen our content, and you see Nick debate. You really think we're going to debate Nick? Get the fuck out of here. Come on, man. Like, this is it's never going to happen, but go ahead.
We can't even get RFK Jr. to debate Dr. Cornel West on Israel Palestine. Like, and Max is like, as you see here, is the perfect guy. He would do way significantly better than me and most people, right, on this issue. But we're trying to get, and me, Aaron Good, and David Taboo, we're trying to get RFK Jr. to debate Dr. Cornel West on the Israel Palestine. Fucking crickets. So that's why I said under Max's tweet, I'm like, dude, we can't get him to debate another presidential candidate who may siphon support from him. So the chances of him debating the editor of the Gray Zone is something new. I'll be surprised. Like, I'm more than happy if I'm wrong, but I'll be surprised.
What's different than him and Joe Biden saying there's no debates? What's the difference?
He literally pulled a Peter Hotez.
RFK
pulled a Peter Hotez on Max Blumenthal.
All right, let's back to the video.
We were the good guys in World War I. World War I was a disaster that led to the Versailles Agreement, which created, humiliated Germany and gave rise to Hitler. So the whole history is completely jumbled here and convoluted. But the biggest distortion is that there were more Jews than Arabs at that point, and that they were given a raw deal when they were a settler colonial population that was infringing on the territory of the Palestinians who had been there for centuries and were being moved in under the auspices of a colonial mandate.
So that's a good question. Now, remember what I said last week? There's a lot of Palestinian activists, people who are against Zionism and apartheid, that refuse to debate Zionists. Like, it's easier to be a simp of the empire. It's easier to be a two-party duopoly simp than it is to be someone who debunks the establishment. So what they do, they wear you out with quizzes. And I'm going to try to explain what I mean by that. So they will tell you a lie, and they're like, he probably don't know the truth about this. And you may be like Max Blumenthal, you may be able to debunk one. They're like, and then they bring up another lie. And you guys see, you get worn out by trying to debunk all the bullshit that they say. They are testing your stamina. And if you can't answer one bullshit lie, if you're able to get away with one lie, they're like, we got you. You can't debunk this lie said about this event in 1950. Now, Max can. That's why RFK Jr. don't want to do that. But this is what the establishment types do all the time. They try to wear you out with fatigue. They try to fatigue you, quiz you on your knowledge. Why do you think you shouldn't vote for Joe Biden? Why do you think Joe Biden's evil? Do you explain, what about this? It's all about wearing you down with attrition. And that's what RFK does. It takes way more effort and energy to debunk his lies than it does for him to spew it. But anyway, let's continue.
I was trying to resist this, but this is getting under my skin. So let's address this for about 60 seconds here. And that's this piece here. Why are you giving JD a pass? That's Jimmy Dore, I assume. He blew it way worse than Cornel on CNN. Call him out. So there's a couple of things, and I'm going to keep myself calm here. One, the assumption that I even know, or I don't know, maybe Nick knows, that I even know what you're talking about is amazing. Like, we care, or I care, I'm going to speak for myself about what Jimmy says on every. I literally have not seen the video on him and Cornel West. And what other thing? Like, I haven't seen all of these videos of Jimmy Dore. That's you guys. You guys have Jimmy derangement syndrome, and you guys want to have us do your work. Like, you get a channel and you call somebody out if you see content you don't like. I haven't seen what you're talking about, bitch.
Now I'm gonna say this because we talk about the Jimmy Dore media industrial complex. So there are people who make a ton of money just talking about Jimmy Dore. So CJ, there are a ton of people who make a lot of money in this space. Like Vanguard does it unapologetically. Sam Cedar does it unapologetically. It's the Jimmy Dore media industrial complex where they make a lot of money talking about Jimmy Dore. So they cultivated an audience that wants to see that. So it not one thing or another. Not like these people exist and they talk about Jimmy Dore. There's consequences to that. There are people who just want to talk about, see people who bash Jimmy Dore all day because they consume Vanguard and Sam Cedar content. So literally on the post-duopoly show, both me and Keaton said that Jimmy Dore could have went harder. What else do you guys want us to say? Do you guys want us to drop a diss track? Motherfucker, like, what else do you say? Other than we said, we think that Jimmy could have went harder on RFK. What other criticism is that in that? And despite us saying that multiple times, there's still people saying, oh my God, why didn't you guys criticize Jimmy? Because we didn't make a Sam Cedar style diss track? Like,
I haven't seen that, Nick.
People were like, why you don't kill Jimmy? And people, there's these Jimmy Dore derangement syndrome people who subscribe to Sam Cedar, Vanguard, and all the other Jimmy Dore media industrial complex people. They're like, hey, RBN, why aren't you doing the Jimmy Dore content that we want to see? I'm like, nigga, there's other shit to talk about. Jimmy Dore is anti-two-party duopoly and anti-war. He's the last person. And he promotes activists. He promoted the Medicare for All march. He promoted Sabby's Boston event. Out of all the people to go after, why the fuck would you go after a comedian when you got the NATO left voting for fucking war and you got media sycophants that support war and support the Democratic Party? You guys worry about Jimmy fucking Dore? You fucking unserious. And there are many people that literally drew the line and say, like, you don't like Jimmy Dore. You're not going to cancel Jimmy Dore. I'm like, fuck off. You're unserious. You can criticize Jimmy Dore like we have done without engaging in this stupid ass cancel culture that only the imperialists deserve. You guys understand? The only people that deserve to be canceled are the DSA left that support the Ukraine war. You guys want us to cancel a fucking comedian because he wasn't hard enough on the, like, this is stupid shit. And that's why CJ frustrated.
Yeah,
right?
it's so frustrating. It's so
stupid as hell. Like, if you want lowbrow, stupid ass content, and if you want to engage with your Jimmy Dore derangement syndrome, nigga, the Vanguard Sam Cedar is right over there.
The Vanguard.
PYT is right over there. Like, what do you want us to do for you guys? It's absurd. If you are for war, if you're telling people to support the Democratic Party, we will go after you. Is Jimmy guilty of any of those? Don't worry, I'll wait. Did Jimmy tell anyone to vote Democrat? Did Jimmy support the Ukraine war? Did Jimmy smear RBN as red, brown lines? Did Jimmy Dore attack the General Strike Summit? No, that was Hassan and the boutique left. That's why we go after them. Nigga, if Jimmy went after the General Strike Summit, he'll be on our list too. But he didn't. Instead, he endorsed the General Strike Summit. Y'all motherfuckers are so, you have no theory, no class, you have no idea what's going on, so you guys don't even know who your enemies are. You guys making enemies out of comedians while rubbing shoulders with fucking imperialists, voting for Joe Biden. Fucking Zach from the Vanguard voting for Joe Biden, but he thinks Jimmy Dore the enemy. You guys see what fucking lack of logical thinking of the working class leads to? We're not buying it. So
yeah,
I'm like,
I'm just saying, like, we don't need this. Not interested. And if you believe like this, I'm telling you, I don't want you to be in the RBN community. So unsubscribe and get the fuck on, and go subscribe to the Vanguard and give them some subscribers in the last 2 years, which they haven't had any. Like, just go on. We have better things and other things to do. Has the Vanguard donated to the RBN library like Jimmy Dore? Have they?
Nope.
So no. So let's get back to the video so we can actually let's play a couple more minutes because I do want to get to the other story.
Yeah, I have a very quick story before Mark. So if you want to, we can wrap or we can play just a little bit.
Yeah, here. No, we can play a couple more minutes so we can wrap the segment on the content and not the nonsense of that super chat.
But at the end, the Ottoman Empire disappears. And so there's a lot of land that is part of the Ottoman Empire. And the question is, what do you do with that land? Woodrow Wilson and the League of Nations said, what we're going to do is we're going to give it to whoever lives there. Whoever lives on that land.
No, it was Sykes-Picot. It wasn't some international agreement.
Say it again.
It was Sykes-Picot. I mean, these were colonial great game players. And it was like a secret agreement. There was nothing democratic about it. The Palestinians were completely shafted.
Okay.
Their own country.
He's basically saying like the deal that we had coming over here, Nick. Like, have you seen the Constitution? That's the deal that, made it. It was an agreement, guys. What do you mean? Slavery was an agreement. That's sort of like what he's trying to make this to akin to, not really talking about what it is. And like I said before, this is the reason why he cannot debate Max Blumenthal. Like, he would be mid-sentence, Nick, and Max would be like, hold on, what did you say? Like, he wouldn't even be able to get all this nonsense out if he was in a debate with Max Blumenthal.
Country. Well, they took Palestine, and they said there's half the people, a little over half are Jews, a little under half are Arabs. So we're going to cut it in two, and we're going to give half, part of the Jews, part of the Arabs. But there was so much anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic bigotry at that time that they gave 4/5 of it to the Arabs and 1/5 to the Jews, just a tiny sliver 9 miles across to the Jews, tiny, tiny little piece of land with their sacred sites that were not Muslim sacred sites ever. So, that's how that would.
I mean, he's just, I don't even know where he's getting that from, but he's basically saying that a Jewish state, an exclusive Jewish state should have been created out of a settler colonial population that was in the minority over the whole of Mandate Palestine.
So this is really not good, to your point, and we can end here. This is really not good because you see Max's reaction is that it's almost not even a linear story. He's just taking something from this, taking something from that, and just making stuff up. Like, and you get what I'm saying? So what is the logical response a human is going to go like, man, what else has this person told me that I need to start questioning? You get what I'm saying? Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt, but literally to your point, that's literally what I thought when I first started to hear RFK unhinged Zionism. I'm like, fuck, what else did he lie about that I thought he was telling the truth about? I'm not an expert on fucking vaccine health. When our position was, to me, it was obvious that the government should mandate it. Like, I don't know the fucking specifics. So when I hear RFK speak, I'm like, okay, that sounds reasonable. I see someone who there may be someone on the other side says, I'm like, okay, I don't know how to speak. That seems reasonable, right? So that's why I want to see him and Peter Hotez debate. Now him and Peter Hotez debating have almost no value to me now because I know Peter Hotez about to lie. Then RFK probably gonna lie. So we're gonna be a battle between two fucking liars at this point. So
that is such a great point because it's no way. Like, I mean, that's like, I can't even. That's like I'm watching Jank and Sam Cedar debate. Like, what value does we get from that? Two propagandists, shields for the Democratic Party. Like, what value do we get out of that? What do we believe in what these other two shilling sort of people have to say? Like, what part do we believe about that? But we can wrap there, sir, and get to the next story.
Yeah, I'm gonna do super chats, and I have a quick story. I don't know if you have one as well, but I have one that should not take that long. We have Margaret Kimberley that should be coming here maybe within the next 15-20 minutes. So I want to make sure this segment is very short. So I'm gonna get a super chat before she gets here. And then we do super chats after she leaves, and I think we'll wrap at that point. Thank you for the $20, Sarah. Much love to you guys. RFK Jr. is controlled opposition. I learned so much from Max. We all do. But he also left out the Havara agreement, and he left a link here if you guys want to follow that. I probably should read about that some more as well. Thank you, Sarah. And then we have Marvin. Thank you for $2. Wes Shu have pulled an RFK on CNN. Wake up, audience. Maybe he said West should have pulled an RFK on CNN. Maybe that's what he's saying. I'm not understanding. But thank you, Marvin.
RFK. What did? You mean like making
I'm
up
not sure
lies? Is that what you're saying? Maybe he's saying making up lies.
But thank you for the super chat. Maybe you can clarify later. Thank you for the 199. M added you got knocked the F out. So CJ he said what he said. I said what I said. Thank you for $2. The lemon 8787. Appreciate that. And then we have thank you for 199. Steph Zamorano, a friend of the show. We appreciate the super chat, Steph. Love RBN. Much appreciated, Steph. Big shout out to her. Thank you for the $5. Christian 999. Let's not forget RFK Jr. supported Hillary. He's part of the staff. And that's another thing that Pasta and Cornel West people, anti-Cornel West, they're like, Cornel West voted for Biden. I'm like, yeah, RFK voted for Hillary. Like, are we using that as a little test or not? That's what these people are.
I think the more important question in that context, Nick, is who are these two people supporting in 2024? And Cornel West is not supporting Joe Biden. No. He's in the race. Can you say that explicitly about RFK and Marianne?
Now, we criticized Dr. Cornel West. I remember I had Roman. We criticized him for those positions because we thought it was fucking stupid. I had him on my show, and I grilled him on that. Like, we sparred about lesser two evilisms a few times. One thing I'll give Dr. Cornel West credit for is that he openly, publicly, even on this show, admitted that he was wrong in 2020. And that's why many people like me who had a lot of respect for Dr. Cornel West, we were extremely confused because he endorsed Dr. Joe Stein in 2016. So he was a Green Party activist, and then you go back. So he admitted that he was wrong. He admitted he got caught up in the wave. And it's good that he acknowledges his mistake in not only doing that, he's actually challenging the establishment in a third party. The only candidate outside of Afro-Man who had the balls to do that. Anyway, thank you for the $5. Last super chat, and I'm gonna try to get through the story, and not a long story. That's why I want to get to this one.
Yeah.
Thank you for the $5, Buster Peak. RFK really doesn't matter too much to me. This subject matter does. I really, really, really hope he does the debate with Max. And this is such a great point because and I'm gonna try and make this clear to Pasta. People are like, why you keep going after RFK over this? The same response I have to Marianne Williamson supporters who was crying when I dragged her in the mud. Any opportunity to talk about the issue. Like, I don't give a fuck about electoral politics. But what do we say on this show? We use electoral politics and people's attention on that as a way to spread awareness on issues. So as someone who advocates for the Palestinians and have for about a decade now, if there's a very popular candidate that's getting this issue wrong, guess who's going to take advantage of that in order to educate people about this issue? And RFK fans have not been enjoying this process. Pasta and many others have been very, very upset because I'm doing what an activist should do. I'm taking advantage of RFK's very popular name and the fact that he fucked up on this issue he shouldn't be fucking up on, and I'm going to make you pay for it. And that's what we should do. And then it's to the point where RFK Jr. fans, it's like, Nick, mercy. Mercy.
Hey,
Nick.
we didn't tell him. We didn't tell him to take back what he said about Roger Waters. We didn't tell him to do several videos with that rabbi. He did that because in the beginning, when he first announced, we had like bland coverage of him, basically not good, not bad. We were just saying, look at the post. What are this saying about? It wasn't really him. We were just using what his effect in the polling to talk about how bad the Democrats were and how bad Joe Biden was. But they took that, Nick, the people who love him took that as, or at least RBN is, but then we start hearing crazy stuff. What are we supposed to do, Nick? What are we supposed to do?
And the funny thing is, someone, I don't know if you remember this, but someone asked us very early on when it was like when RFK Jr. maybe a week or two in, and the Marianne Williamson fans were still very upset. They're like, why do you guys drag Marianne Williamson, but you guys are not laying a glove on RFK? You remember that, CJ? Everyone was like, RBN is supporting RFK Jr. because they only attacking Marianne. Why aren't you attacking RFK Jr.? And my response was fucking simple. I waited until he'd fuck up. I don't know that much about him. Yeah, he just started the race. I'm filling him out. I'm covering some things he's talking about. I don't know what happened to my camera just now. There you go. I'm covering some things he's talking about. I waited to him to say something that's worth covering. Now, Marianne Williamson immediately put a foot in her mouth when she talked about the Ukraine war. So we immediately had something to criticize on. And RFK started talking about other stuff because the media was deflecting about health. Then he finally started talking about a topic he really wanted to run on, smearing Palestinians support of the Israeli state. And that's why we started calling him out on this. It's very simple. I don't understand why people don't understand that. Meanwhile, I'm going to try to run through the story real quick.
Yeah, let's
this is really not a long story. I just want to talk about this concept. Maybe a 3-4 minute, 5 minute segment, Aaron. Because this is another example of the failure of our system. Now, imagine if this was the reality in the quote unquote socialist state. Do you guys want to know what China average retirement age is? 53. Meanwhile, more Americans say they can never retire. Now, there are a lot of free market capitalists, many people on the right that love our system that will never talk about this. What kind of fucking system makes it so that 1/3 of workers, around 30% of workers who work full time, say they do not believe they can retire? And this is the funny thing. This is what the delusional thing is. I'm trying to be very fast on this because there are a lot of Gen Z, there are a lot of millennial people that are still kind of delusional about this, CJ. There are millennials and Gen Z workers that thinking they're about to retire. Now, I'm going to show you guys this generational split, which I actually thought was going to be the exact opposite coming into this story. So you had 30% of workers who are under 29% of workers under 55 that said they believe they can retire, right? Now, this is the indictment of this system. Despite that number, 40% of Gen X workers said they don't believe they can retire. What? 40%? That's an insane number. That's insane. So you're working. You're contributing to this system. And our system, by stealing your labor value, robs you of your right to retire. 40% of the workers are robbed the right to retire because of the class war waged by the capitalist class. You guys know how ridiculous that is? And then it's even worse for boomers. Nearly half of the boomers that are working right now say they are not retiring. Is there a bigger indictment on the system than this? Meanwhile, actually, I will give you your thoughts, CJ Cal.
Yeah, because everybody watching right now in the United States and most of the 50 states, you can say, yeah, that's just a story. I don't know about if that's true, sir. Just go down to your Walmart and you don't see about 5 people that you're going to say to yourself, why the hell are you still working? Because they're in their 60s or 70s. So just take a walk down there. Just take a walk down to your local Walmart and you'll see what this is proving. Like, we can have all these anecdotal stories, but it'll be thousands of them if you just take a walk down. Go ahead, Nick.
So compare this to other countries where retirement is very plentiful. Let's talk about the authoritarian, unhinged Chinese Communist Party. Under the watch of the unhinged, authoritarian, anti-worker Chinese Communist Party, workers retire at an average age of 54. Goddamn Chinese Communist Party pushing workers to retire with dignity? How dare they? Do you really want to live under a system where you retire at 54, CJ? What kind of communist shit is this? So I want you guys to understand now, in America, you have seniors, as you mentioned, at Walmart, working at Walmart. Seniors working at Target, and then they write feel-good stories, CJ. They will say, oh my God, look, here's Becky. She's working at Target at 80 years old. Isn't that amazing, guys? That's the story they write. Isn't it amazing that we got Susan? She's 82 years old and she still work at Walmart. Look at her work ethic. These young people can learn from Susan. So meanwhile, in China, they retire at 54.
So true.
And not only that, China takes care of their seniors. We got massive amount of seniors who are homeless in this country. We got seniors that literally had to cut their pills in half because they can't afford the medication. Meanwhile, in China, not only do people retire early, they focus on programs to enhance senior living. China sets up national university for the age to build lifelong learning societies. So as in America, you got seniors in this country that is saying, welcome to Walmart. Seniors in China is thriving. So my question is, I'll wrap the segment up here. What kind of system makes it so people who are productive? So once again, I'm not even using a moral argument because my moral argument is that everyone should retire. We all know that's my position. But let's take the morality out of it. Don't you guys believe someone who's able to work and have worked and put in the system for decades not allowed to retire in dignity? Marx is a critique of Western society through the lens of indigenous cultures. So indigenous cultures, when you look at Latin American tribes, when you look at Asian communities, when you look at how African tribes behave, they treated and took care of their seniors late in life. And then European capitalist Western society demanded that seniors go back to work. And they viewed indigenous people as lazy bums because they had the audacity to make people retire. Right? So I'm sure CJ will be back here soon. We have our amazing guest, Mark, here. Here's CJ here. Mark, you can give us a thumbs up whenever you're ready. I'm going to introduce our next coming guest. We have the editor for the Black Agenda Report, amazing journalist, independent reporter. And I can't wait to talk to her about a few of these issues, especially with the issue with Niger, the continuing imperialism between France and the United States. Obviously, a lot is going on with Ukraine as well. So I want to welcome to Revolutionary Blackout, Margaret Kimberley, one of our favorite guests to have on. It's always great to have you on so you can take us to school. Welcome to RBN.
Thank you. Thank you both. Good to be back.
And I still think you hold the title for the guests we've had on the most frequent. I think you still hold the most interview titles. Yeah, I can't think of anybody else that we've had on more often.
Other than close people, other than like Zoya, outside of like people like Zoya, maybe
our friends, people we know in person. Yeah, absolutely. Not just mean you're not our friend. We do consider you a comrade.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Ahead, so there's quite a few things that we want to cover. Obviously, the situation in Niger that is going on, and I'm gonna pull this statement. I should have pulled it up a little bit earlier. Where the Black Alliance for Peace had a statement on this, and I've been reading a lot about Niger, and I told you guys my general position is whenever I see what the West is talking about, wherever I see what side they are on, I tend to work backwards for my conclusion and assume they're in the wrong, and I am generally right. So with that said, I'm gonna pull the statement. I'm gonna pass it to you, and I want to get your thoughts on what's going on in Nigeria. Now, this is another United States occupation because after this coup, you have the United States military that's claiming that it's still going to stay in Nigeria despite the wishes of the new government and the will of the people that want the United States interference to end in Nigeria. Now, this is the statement from Black Alliance for Peace, and I will just read the headline. I will pass to you, Margaret Kimberley, if you want to expand more on this. All Africans should condemn the call for ECOWAS-led military invasion of Niger. So, Margaret, is there anything else that you want to add to this? Anything that I'm missing? This is a story I'm still reading about and want to learn about, so I'm glad to have you on so you can kind of explain the situation more.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, it's Niger, and it's a French pronunciation.
Niger.
It was a former French colony, which is an issue in this story. So just to start out with a little background, there was a coup July 26th, just a couple of weeks ago. And coups, I want to start out by saying coups are very problematic. In many cases, there are governments elected by the people, and this president was elected, but that can also be problematic. That's not proof of a government that really represents its people and their rights at home and around the world. So I just want to start out by saying I'm not pro-coup. African nations, the African Union frowns upon coups because they destabilize countries. But there was a coup, and it seems as though there's popular support for this new government, a military government. But what's interesting about it, yes, and that's we reprinted an article from People's Dispatch. That's the article we reprinted in Black Agenda Report last week. It's a good article, a lot of great detail. So the new government seems to have popular support. So that's a photo, and I think the photo says "Down with France" and calls Macron a son of a bitch. And France still plays an outsized role in these former colonies. Niger has a lot of uranium. That's why France is interested in, and the U.S. in maintaining control there. But it's all for France. It's used for nuclear power in Europe. And people in Niger, most of them don't have electricity. So it's clear that France would not want a government that's going to change the status quo. Now, ECOWAS is a regional group of West African states. And it's very sad, but they've also become tools of the U.S. You know, the U.S. works overtime to dominate the rest of the world. So all of these formations that are supposed to work on behalf of people all over the world, the U.S. wants to control. So ECOWAS said that they were opposed to the coup and that they might help occupy Niger. So Nigeria, the Nigerian president said that Nigerian troops, the two countries border each other, that Nigeria might actively involve itself in Niger. So how do you know the U.S. is responsible? Well, the deposed president, Mohamed Bazoum, had an editorial in the Washington Post. And the Washington Post is one of those media outlets that speaks for the U.S. state. And he said he'd been deposed unfairly. Of course, he doesn't want to be deposed. And I can't get into all of I'm not aware of all of the issues, but the fact that the president, the deposed president, is in the Washington Post saying that the coup was wrong and the U.S. is correct to involve itself tells you all you need to know. Black Alliance for Peace, we always speak out for self-determination of nations, that every people around the world, group of people, have a right to determine their own fate, determine their own politics, and not be controlled by outside forces, which is clearly the case in Niger. Niger has a U.S. drone base, has at least one base. I don't know if you remember a few years ago when Trump was still president, that U.S. soldiers were killed in Niger. And at the time, the emphasis was on, what Trump said to a congresswoman who knew one of the families, and he was rude and racist. And it wasn't about,
I remember.
It wasn't about the U.S. being in Niger. It wasn't about the U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM. It wasn't about the U.S. Claiming the right to interfere with these countries and having these dupes and stooge governments that allow the U.S. to hold sway. So I think the most important thing to be aware of is that some of these African countries who are part of ECOWAS have said, we're not going to involve ourselves, have spoken up for the rights of the Nigerian people, have said that they will not allow themselves to be used by the Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso. And I also believe the Nigerian Senate, their parliament, if you will, has also rejected the president's request for troops to be sent there. So we have to be very careful. They get people to speak on their behalf through their organs, such as the Washington Post or the New York Times or wherever. And you're right. If the U.S. is on one side, you're probably right 90% of the time to be on the other side, because the U.S. seeks to dominate the world. That's what they do.
Yeah, Yeah, and it's very important to realize that not all these African leaders have the best interests of the working class.
That's right.
They are part of African bourgeoisie. But my position is I want them to struggle against the bourgeoisie without outside support. So
Exactly.
if even if their bourgeoisie do not have their best interest, because this is what woke imperialists or liberal-minded imperialists would say. They would say, "Well, the politicians in Niger. That's what happens when I read more than I listen to the news.
It's
You guys
okay.
know I always fuck things up. Niger. They would say, well, the bourgeoisie of Niger, they don't care about the working class of the country, and they would be better off with Western support, and they don't really care about the consequences. But as an anti-imperialist, I want that to be their decision to make, not the West, not the West. And I was very careful. That's why I didn't want to immediately comment on this. I'd rather bring on someone like Margaret Kimberley to talk about this. Because my thing is, like, as you said, is the will of the people. And I've seen so many, because there's just one I dug up real quick, where it seems like there's for the new government of Nigeria. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. You guys, and that was the article I put up from Black Agenda Report as well, where thousands rally in support of this coup. But the and our responsibility as someone who live in the West is to call out the contradictions of our government, where they saying that the fact that Niger pulled off this coup is worthy of them escalating wars. It's worthy of them occupying our country. Meanwhile, the United States, they coup people all the goddamn time.
Oh, sure. That's right. I mean, if you look at the history, you know, one of the first presidents of the Democratic Republic of Congo was overthrown. Patrice Lumumba. At the end of the Eisenhower administration, Kennedy was about to become president. In a few weeks, he was murdered. He was imprisoned, murdered, and they dissolved his body in acid. He and several other people to destroy any evidence of the crime. Kwame Nkrumah in the late 60s was deposed. The U.S. was involved there. So we could go on with all of these interferences, and you show there only Latin America, not the whole
Yeah, you
world.
can't even fit it all.
That gives you an idea of what the U.S. does. So for the U.S. to wag their finger about a coup, and the U.S. does this a lot, you know, sometimes there's a military coup, sometimes it's siding with one group of people in a country, regime change efforts, been sending money to Taiwan, or any number of places where the U.S. Makes a great effort to interfere with the rights of people around the world. And you're right, it's up to people in Niger to figure out who they want to run their country. It's up to them to struggle about that. It's not up to the US, it's not up to France. And that's the most important thing to remember. And it you know, it can get complicated, but I think if we stick to that, basic belief in sovereignty of nations, the right of people to determine their fate, to determine what kind of government they have, then you don't have to worry about who you think is good or who you would or wouldn't prefer. It's up to people in Niger. It's not up to Emmanuel Macron. It's not up to Joe Biden. It's up to them. And, you know, countries in the region, other countries are kicking out France. Mali has kicked out the French. They in order to get resources along with the U.S., they're a partner and a vassal of the U.S. So there is this trend, and I think it's a good trend to get France out. Now, of course, there's a double complication of making sure that these are governments that represent their people, but that's for their people to figure out how to do, not anybody in Washington or Paris or any place else.
Yeah, so I want to read these last few headlines, and CJ, I can pass to you if you have anything you want to add, and then I want to get to another segment. CJ, I can pass to you if you have a question for Margaret as well after my next segment. But this is shit's gonna get real in Niger. Another example of the unhinged Biden and Emmanuel Macron administration, led by their puppets, And there are people in Niger. I've seen a lot of clips. I'm gonna spare you guys time, but there's so many clips of the people rallying and they almost getting ready for war. Like they warning their people about the threat of war because these people take pride in the fact that they just overthrew this Western puppet, this government that they viewed to be oppressed. And once again, I'm not putting my opinion in it. A government that they viewed to be oppressed and they overthrew, and they're very proud about that. So these people are ready to fight, and this is going to be real, and this is going to be a situation we're going to continue to cover. The Niger military deployed reinforcements to capital after ignoring the deadline to see power. So they was given a deadline that if you guys don't get the government back, the corrupt Western-backed government, if you don't relinquish your power back to them, we may take military action. Now, my question to people who may side with Western forces, does that sound like people who care about the well-being of the Niger people, willing to wage war, bloody war for, they're going to be, God know how long it will take for that war to end? Like that, does that seem like people who care about them? Then that's that. And once again, as someone who was learning about this, these are the simple questions I ask myself as I'm exploring this issue. Like, does it seem like this side care about the Nigerian people? Obviously not. Mario, do you want to chime in? I saw you on mute. If you want to chime in,
sure. Should be. You're absolutely right. That should be our emphasis, not on what the U.S. wants or what the U.S. claims, but it's for people around the world to decide. And you have to, and that's where Black Agenda Report comes in, and other independent media in deciphering this information. Because if you rely on the Washington Post, they've got the deposed president in an op-ed advocating for intervention in his country. So that's why you have to be aware. Read Black Agenda Report, Black Alliance for Peace. I wear more than one hat. Black Alliance for Peace. We have a great statement today that you were just showing everyone. You can see it on our website, blackallianceforpeace.com, or on social media, on Twitter and Facebook, and I still say Twitter. But anyway,
I refuse to call it X. It's not happening. Not happening. I refuse. It won't call it X. I'm looking at you side eye.
Yeah.
But honestly, guys, I'm not bullshitting here just because Mark is here. But one of the first websites I pulled up, kind of like I need to learn more about Niger, was Black Agenda Report. I typed in Black Agenda Report in Niger. And I'm dead honest. That's why I saw this. And I reached out to Mark after reading that first article. They are a fantastic resource. That's why we asked her to come on. Why we got
let me ask a little more on the same topic before we move on. Did you hear or know about this part? And let me read this. This is Grazo reporting along the same lines. Before leading the push for invading Niger, ECOWAS chair Balu Tanumbu spent years laundering money for heroin dealers in Chicago and has been marred in corruption scandals ever since. And it's an article that they have. Had you heard anything about this, or about at least the chairman that he's talking about in this tweet here?
I'm not aware of that. I mean, the Gray Zone usually has good reporting. It's not something they would make up out of whole cloth. So that's entirely possible. But it just gives you an indication of who the U.S. friends are, who they consider their assets. So it's not surprising to me, and it seems entirely believable. But I haven't read that for myself, so that's all I can say for now.
Yeah, so I'll put this link, everybody who's watching and listening, in the description. So if you want to go take a look at this, since I referenced it in the segment, but I'll put it back to you, Nick, for the next story.
Yeah, and then if you have anything you want to add after this part, feel free if you want, CJ. We have good news, which I think is exciting to see, considering how much propaganda have gone towards the Ukraine war. There was a CNN poll that came out, and I want you guys to realize how much support they lost since the beginning of this war. Right. And this is despite, and I think we talked about this before, Margaret, I think this is like one of the most unhinged propagandistic wars I've seen in my lifetime, and I've seen the Iraq war. I've seen a lot of shit. But the propaganda, and we do propaganda report on regarding CNN on this, Fox News, MSNBC, it is really not a partisan thing. Like, a lot of people think like the right is better overall, but the establishment right-wing media is all for Ukraine war, just like the MSNBC is. So despite this narrative coming from every single direction, the American people are still rejecting supporting the Ukraine war. So here's the headline. I'm very interested in getting your thoughts on this, Margaret, and then I'll break the numbers down. But here's the CNN poll. Majority of Americans oppose more U.S. aid for Ukraine in war with Russia. So what's your initial reaction to this, Margaret?
Well, I was also very glad to see this. This was very important after this year and a half long onslaught. And I agree with you. I have never seen war propaganda like this in my life. You couldn't, I remember in those early days, as soon as you turned on your computer, blue and yellow flags, or Putin is evil, or you couldn't watch the Grammy Awards. Zelensky was everywhere. You couldn't go to a graduation ceremony or watch an award show. You couldn't do anything without having to hear.
Draft? The NBA draft, they literally dedicated like 3 minutes to Ukraine. Anyway, go ahead.
Which tells you that they know people would not be in favor of. I don't know how many billions of dollars it is now that has gone to produce a stalemate. Actually, I don't even think it is a stalemate. I think Russia is winning clearly. Ukraine is out of weapons. Because Russia. If Russia were just fighting Ukraine, it would have been over. They would have won. But Russia was fighting against all of NATO. So these were weapons for all of NATO countries, and they're out. And Biden, it's so funny about Biden and his what do I want to call it? His diminished capacity. Sometimes he blurts out the truth, and he blurted out, "Well, we're out of weapons," and everyone knows that to be the case. Yeah. So you've had billions of dollars for Ukraine. We didn't get Build Back Better, didn't get a minimum wage increase. The pandemic emergency programs are over. People are being kicked off of Medicaid, kicked off of their SNAP benefits at the same time that all this money has gone to Ukraine. And the reasons for this war, and another one who blurted out the truth, it's interesting, a bunch of not very sophisticated people, but that's all to the good because sometimes they tell the truth. The Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said, well, we're trying to weaken Russia. That's what we're doing. And that is it. It's a proxy war, and the Ukrainians are the victims. And they are literally dragging, you can see it online. They are literally dragging men off the street and conscripting them by force, which is a war crime. By the way, it is quite literally, on Geneva conventions, you can't you can't do that. You can't drag people off and force them to enlist. But and Ukraine is not a democracy. Before this happened, before the Russian special military operation, you would hear truthful reporting about Ukraine. Yeah. You would hear that it's the most corrupt country in Europe, that it's the poorest country in Europe. And of course, it makes sense that the most corrupt country would be the poorest country. You knew about the Nazi-affiliated far right and fascist elements in their government and their Azov battalion, and that there were people in Congress who attempted to keep U.S. funding from going to them. And what did we get? A lot of propaganda telling us you're just repeating Putin talking points if you pointed out things that are true and demonstrably true. Ukraine is a fascistic state. They outlawed collective bargaining. Unions are outlawed. They've outlawed the opposition media. They've outlawed opposition political parties. So, and we know that the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Nothing else makes sense. I always thought that. And then Seymour Hersh wrote his 5,000-word expose, and I hope it's not hard to find. You can find it on his Substack. A credible investigative reporter explaining how it was done. And they said so. They were like, well, we're going to stop the pipeline. We're going to, Russia's... they said it openly. Biden said, well, don't worry about it. We're going to stop it. And then if you say that that's what they did, it's like, oh, no, that's a crazy conspiracy theory. And I'm like, all I'm doing is quoting Joe Biden and Victoria Nuland and that whole gang of incompetence.
Yeah, you have a
Go
bunch
ahead.
of climate activists that is endorsing Joe Biden, who's the biggest eco-terrorist in human history. Like,
And there's more drilling on federal lands in the Biden administration than there was under Trump. And that's just a fact. So we see, Republicans, Democrats give good, they say the right thing. So, for example, a Republican will come in and say, I'm pulling out of the climate accords. And a Democrat will come in and say, well, of course, we're going to be in the climate accords. First of all, you don't know the climate accords are a bit of a joke. They don't really do much. They don't. They have these suggestions for, well, we're going to let the Earth's temperature rise. That's what the latest agreement says. Well, the temperature can go up 1.5 degrees C, which is disastrous. But then you see this, and you see that little Greta from Sweden. She's endorsing Biden and talking about terrorist Russia. And I'm like, wait a second. You're supposed to be the big environmentalist icon, and you say nothing about the U.S. Explosion.
That's how you know who's serious or not. That's how you know who's serious.
Well, I always knew she was some kind of a tool, and so I'm glad when she says these things.
I told you guys my weakness is I give people benefit of doubt, and I didn't think Greta was real. To be clear, I didn't think she was like real, but I was like, she a kid. She probably just being. She probably has some liberal. I gave her a lot. I was pretty hands off, but after seeing her on the Ukraine show, like, all right, she deserves a few licking. Because now you being a willful idiot for the establishment at that point.
Sounds like I'm glad I don't know who she is because I don't know much about her. And I'm happy I don't. Yeah, I stay unplugged. I have a unique ability to literally tune shit out if I want to.
Yeah. Well, you're lucky that way because so much of the quote unquote news we get is nonsense and propaganda of various kinds. But the Biden administration did this, and billions of dollars are going to Ukraine, to the military industrial complex, to crooked Ukrainians. There's Greta meeting Zelensky. And Zelensky and his people are skimming money. They're not sending all that money, and Zelensky and his friends among the Ukrainian oligarchs, they got their hands in the till. So people are opposed and should be. But we, those of us who even ask these questions, we are ignored. There's no one in Congress who represents us. No one. And you see this, I'm looking at this video, the blast of a dam, which the Ukrainians blew up themselves. And then they're always trying to say Russia does something crazy. It's like, well, they're shelling the nuclear plant that they have control of. Yeah. Well, they blew up this dam to flood their own troops. No, Ukraine did this. But at any rate, I distracted myself a bit there. But people have every reason to oppose this theft of our public dollars for this proxy war. And, Zelensky was put into office by an oligarch. His name is Kolomoisky, who's such a crook. He's been sanctioned by the U.S. Kolomoisky pulled off one of the biggest heists in history. He robbed his own bank and tried to use the U.S. to launder money with some shady real estate deals. And he's a citizen of Ukraine and Israel and Cyprus and some other place. And that's Zelensky's godfather, so to speak. So that tells you all you need to know about this country. But no one represents us, the progressives in Congress. They all sound alike. The supposedly liberal media sounds like the Wall Street Journal. You're showing that video from the Wall Street Journal. It sounds like Fox News. MSNBC and Fox News are on the same page here. And the members of Congress who've spoken out against Ukraine were all far-right Republicans who ordinarily I have nothing in common with, the Lauren Boeberts and the Marjorie Taylor Greens. It was a handful of Republicans who questioned this. But what did progressives do? What did the squad do? They put together some mealy-mouthed, backpedaling, fence-straddling letter, and they wouldn't even stand by it for 24 hours. The next day, they denounced themselves and said, sorry, we made a mistake. It was a clerical thing. Some intern was in charge. I can't remember what the BS was. Man. but there's no one to represent us. No presidential candidates to represent. Of course, Biden, it's his war. He's insisting on this. And, RFK Jr., that flake, at first he says he's against it, but then he's in favor of, a tool of the Zionist lobby. So there's nobody. There's no one to speak up against them. And Cornel West, who's running for the Green Party presidential nomination, is opposed to this funding, and everyone should be. This doesn't benefit this country at all. It benefits these elements with this cockamamie idea they're going to get Putin out of power, or they're going to, they're going to break up Russia, or they're going to put their oligarchs in charge. None of which is going to happen. But they're very desperate to maintain U.S. domination, and that desperation causes them to do things that are just insane.
Now that was a powerful rant. I'm a rant enthusiast myself. I gotta say that was a good one. And there's a lot to unpack there. I'm gonna try to unpack it here. But to this video, you guys see this screenshot. I'll pull this up because I thought this screenshot here is amazing. CJ, can you imagine us sitting in that seat? Can you imagine Margaret Kimberley sitting in the same seat that she's sitting in right now? Will they be as comfortable as they are? Will we be allowed that microphone? Can you imagine what we would say?
No, we would not be. But the war propaganda is endless. The corporate media that I've already mentioned. I'm 60. I'm about to be 64 years old, and I was a kid during the Vietnam War. But I remember there was a point when the media began to ask questions, when they began to say, "Wait a second, maybe this isn't what we're being told," where they gave attention to the anti-war movement, and that's all gone. If you go to any major media outlet, you see nothing but defense of this intervention. You don't see a question. People who are in opposition don't get to have, they haven't had an op-ed by someone who opposes this use of the people's money. So, sometimes it feels like we're alone, but that's the other important thing about this poll. It shows that we are not, that there are millions of people who feel the same way too. And if the people in this country, if we had the democracy they go on and on and on about, there would not be this endless support for this debacle.
Yeah, and I actually want to get back to something else you said, because there are a lot of great things you said regarding how they used to cover the Ukraine war. That's why it's one of the most propagandized wars I've seen, because it's almost impressive how they switched on a dime. Like, and people say we're conspiracy theorists because we say there's a deep state, a permanent state, and they're like, "Oh, what do you think happened? Do you think they all got an email and they all?" Yes, something like that. No, how the hell did they shift on a dime? You had Ro Khanna, who called this out. Ro Khanna had a tweet in 2018 where he called out how the Congress is funding neo-Nazis, and then he deleted that shit. So he part of the group email. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. They fucking, the BBC did a documentary. I covered this maybe a few months ago on RBN. They did a documentary talking about how there are a lot of Russian speakers, a lot of ethnic Russians in the Donbass in eastern Ukraine. And the whole segment was about how they're like, isn't it crazy that there's so many pro-Russian people in Ukraine that want to be part of Russia? You used to do documentaries about this shit. Now, oh my God, you're a conspiracy theorist, you bring this up. Now, this is the headline. Congress, and this is in 2016, Congress removed a ban on funding neo-Nazis from its year-end spending bill. So here's the subheadline. Under pressure from the Pentagon, Congress has stripped the spending bill. So the Pentagon demanded they funded Nazis, and Congress abided by that. Stripped the spending bill of amendment that prevented funds from falling into the hands of Ukrainian neo-fascist groups. So now the NATO left is telling us that this never happened. That these neo-Nazis, they're not neo-Nazis. Come on, Margaret. They're far right. They're far right activists now.
Well, they, when it first started, they had to airbrush all these photos because every Ukrainian soldier had one of these Nazi insignias. This one of them is called the Black Sun. It's an SS
Yeah,
symbol. It just
yeah.
is. And they had to airbrush these pictures, and that's why they want to control these platforms, and that's why, which I wrote about a couple weeks ago, that's why you guys and other channels are always under attack, because you give us all the opportunity to report on this news that the corporate media won't. But but yes, everyone knows that Ukraine has this interesting history. It emerged after World War One. Excuse me, and after I'm messing up the history here, I know, but anyway, I'll do my best to explain. Half the country wanted to be part of the Soviet Union, another half did not want to be part of the Soviet Union. There's parts of the country that are linguistically tied. Zelensky grew up speaking Russian. He learned to speak Ukrainian as an adult. The Donbass regions, which did not want to be part of the coup government. So Crimea, I'm sorry, I'm jumbling my chronology here. So Crimea, Putin, they called it an annexation of Crimea, although there was a vote. But Crimea's population is more Russian than Ukrainian. So it is quite logical that they would vote to be part of Russia. Khrushchev gave it to Ukraine in the 1950s. I'm not sure why, I don't know. But but Ukraine has this very fraught history. There was a famine in the 20s that killed many people in the Soviet Union, not just Ukraine. And they've made up this word Holodomor, and it was a deliberate genocide of the Ukrainian people. It was a famine, and it may have been caused by political decisions that were made. But so there was a lot of resentment amongst some segments of the Ukrainian population against the Soviet Union. So when Hitler's troops invaded Ukraine, part of the country welcomed them. And Stepan Bandera was the biggest collaborator with the Germans. And so there are many Ukrainians who still support anybody who was anti-Soviet, and even though there's no more Soviet Union, anti-Russian. And so there's very strong Nazi elements. There's a video. There's a couple things in 2020 here, when there were all of the mass protests in the wake of George Floyd's killing by the police. There's a photo of a group of Ukrainians with a sign that says "Free." What was the man's name who killed him? The cop who put his knee on his neck. I'm forgetting the man's name.
Derek Chauvin.
Yeah.
Thank you. So there's a sign of football, soccer for us, football match,
Yeah.
and there's Ukrainians that have the sign "Free Derek Chauvin." What does that have to do with Ukraine? It tells you this is a white supremacist neo-Nazi country. There's a video of people. They have a sign that says "White Lives Matter" in Ukraine.
Yep.
What does Ukraine's all white? What are they talking about? But this is a white supremacist state. It's a neo-Nazi state. White supremacists from all over the world went there to help them to try to defeat Russia in this war. So that's what you need to know about Ukraine. And these white supremacist people have been put to the front of the immigration line. If a Ukrainian shows up at the border, they were flying to Mexico, renting a car, driving to Texas, and they get into the US, they get asylum, while Haitians and others are automatically deported without ever being able to have their asylum requests heard. So all that I could go on, but all that to say, it is a good thing that most people don't want this. But despite the fact that most people don't want this, nobody in the major parties will say a word against what has been going on.
I wish I could find this damn video, because I had a video that went viral because Zoya sent me this. Zoya, by the way, Zoya's life is from the USSR, from Eastern Ukraine, and she was on the show explaining this many times, how closely connected the Russian culture is from the Ukrainian culture. So that's why when Zelensky and the media pretend that Russia is some country that is attacking them for no reason, they have no cultural heritage, that's bullshit. But before I show you guys this, I did want to thank you guys because you guys was one of the few people who covered RBN being censored in the Black Agenda Report. There was we were censored, and you notice all the free speech people that usually call out YouTube censorship. Nowhere to be found when the group of Black Marxists was censored. And there was see, I'm blanking on their channel. There was other what was Black. I'm blanking on their name, but the other channel they was banned as well.
Yeah,
so then
Black Power Media.
Black Power Media. It's Shane Cowell just on the show. Black Power Media. They're gonna join us as well. Black Power Media. They was banned as well. Not a lot of coverage on that. So once again, big shout out to Black Agenda Report for that. But what you laid out is exactly why they are losing the propaganda war on Ukraine. And despite their narrative, people can always look at the history and the facts, the old reporting. There was a segment from an Indian news station where it was like, hey, do you guys know that the United States actually helped lead a coup in 2014? So like the rest of the world is catching up. So the facts is not on your side. And no matter how much propaganda you put out, the more that there are people like Margaret Kimberley telling the truth about this crisis, the worse they're going to be out. Now we'll get to actually the poll numbers again. I want to find this video. Hopefully I might find it later. I posted a long time ago because Ukraine, and I knew this as a soccer fan. I watched a lot of European soccer. I love watching Champions League, World Cup. Obviously, I love European soccer is like the only team sport I watch. Because I mostly watch boxing, combat sports, and Ukraine was always known for having extremely racist chants. And I'm kicking myself. I can't find this video that I posted. Maybe fucking they deleted it. Where they like doing Nazi signs. CJ, do you remember that video I posted a long time ago? It was
a while ago. Yeah, I vaguely remember that. I do.
I can't find it though, and they do this to intimidate Muslim Black players. It's a famous thing where they would chant racist shit. They would chant and call Black players monkey on the field. And as a soccer fan, I knew this even before the Ukraine war, and most people knew. And that's remember when FIFA and them they came out with statements like, "Yo, we don't condone racism." And there was this big discourse over the racism problem that happened because the Ukrainian fans was constantly and not only them, it was the UK as well. To be clear, not only them, right. But the Ukraine was often there, and I'm gonna find the video for you guys later. I'm kicking myself I can't find it. But do you want to chime in? I saw you on mute, Mario. If you want to chime in, I'm gonna get back to the polls here soon. But do you want to chime in again?
Yeah, it's the BBC did a documentary about the neo-Nazi influence in Ukraine, and they showed it. I assume it's the video you're referring to. Where they show, that's what what I was showing. White Lives Matter. This is a march in Ukraine in 2020. White Lives Matter. Yeah. Now that's the LGBTQ flag and the Russian flag, and
now liberals love them. Liberals love them now. The progressive love these people now, though.
But they're burning the flags. And anyway, that's a bit inconvenient for them, isn't it? But White Lives Matter in a march in Ukraine.
And you had there was warnings given to Black volunteers. They said if you want people that want to volunteer for Ukraine, we recommend you don't go if you're Black because they're not used to seeing Black people. That was their excuse. They said they'll probably call you monkey, the N-word, and like they gave a warning to Black people to not go to Ukraine after this war started. So I'm still there's a good chance that Twitter deleted this damn video. I posted a long time ago.
Well, but you're right. It was I think it was the Peace Corps. And
the Peace Corps,
the Peace Corps, they warned Black people, maybe you don't want to volunteer in Ukraine. And I'm like, no, you would not want to volunteer in Ukraine. But you're right. Western media before February 2022. And there's so many things we're lied to about. And I want to say shortly after this war started, Russia and Ukraine were involved in peace talks that were hosted by Turkey. So people who try to tell you can't make the Ukrainians talk to the Russians, they were talking to the Russians until the US and the UK told them not to. So as far as I'm concerned, that, people talk about blood on Putin's hands. Well, there was blood on Boris Johnson's hand and Joe Biden's hand, because there were ways to stop this. But their goal is, as I said, this unattainable goal of regime change in Russia, or changing the system in Russia, or getting their hands on Russia's gas and oil, which is not going to happen.
So I actually want to get back to the poll. I'll make sure you guys. Damn, I'm mad I can't find that video. I'll play it a few times though. But let's get back to the Ukraine poll, because there's a few things I want to cover before we get Margaret out of here. In the poll, it showed that 55% of Americans oppose Ukraine funding compared to 45% who support. And that's a comparison to, I think that number around 68%, around 70% early in last February. So that's a massive fall off in support Ukraine war, despite, as me and Margaret explained, the massive amount of propaganda that's going to support the war in Ukraine. And one of the reasons why their propaganda doesn't work, because they've been trying to explain why the American people should care about this war. And it always end up something like this. They'll say something like, well, we got to send billions of dollars to fight Russia and Ukraine, because if we don't, Russia's going to take over Europe next. Then America would be in danger next. So they say that at the same time. They tell us that Russia is weak. Meanwhile, they tell us that we got to stop Russia or they'll take over Europe. You guys see how these contradictions tend to fall flat? You want to know who the only people who fall for this shit? Brain dead Democrats. Because when you dive into this poll, now I was looking at this poll, it was very interesting to me. There's a very, very strong split here, partisan-wise. And I can't wait to hear what your guys' thoughts on this, because I think it's very hilarious that the Democratic Party is now the unapologetically pro-war, pro-Nazi party. So let me read the stats here. I'll get your guys' opinion on this. So Republicans say that Congress should not authorize new funding, 71%. Now, when you look at Democrats, that number is literally flipped. So 71% of Republicans oppose spending. Meanwhile, on Democrats, 62% favor spending. So there's a sharp partisan divide. And then I will argue that 60% number is not even good for them. We're talking about normie Democrats, not independent average people. Even and this is my argument, 4 out of 10 Democrats see through it. Like, what? I think that's bad, right? But what does that say that people like Bernie Sanders and the NATO left is so out of touch from the working class people who's starting to see through this war? You want to chime in, CJ or Margaret?
It tells you what the state of the duopoly, and these people who are liberalish on domestic policy like Bernie Sanders and the squad they're just so useless, because they, at the end of the day, they always come in on the side of the state. And and electoral politics in this country, we reprinted one of the late Glenn Ford's old pieces about
I saw
political parties in this country and how they're not real political parties. A political party is supposed to advocate for a group of people, but we get the same thing no matter who wins. They're both pro-war parties, so these terms left and right actually lose their meaning when you start talking about U.S. interventions around the world. So of course they're all in favor. And so I don't even know what right wing means. If they're all in favor of this, so I guess they're all right wing, right? I mean,
that's what that means.
People say, Nick, why are you calling the NATO left? They're not left because they support NATO. I'm like, yeah, you're right. The point of the NATO left term is to point out the contradiction of calling yourself a leftist while supporting NATO, because those things are inherently contradictory. And I'm gonna show this. I'm trying to get here through the last few pretty quickly here. So, despite the fact that American people are waiting on this, I want to get your opinion on this, Margaret and Kimberley, Margaret and CJ. You have Senate Democrats. So this doesn't look shady at all. So, as people are starting to turn on Ukraine funding because they're funding one of the most corrupt countries, as you mentioned, Senate Democrats, including Bernie Sanders, blocked a watchdog for Ukraine. They blocked oversight into Ukraine aid funding. And this is how you know that their position is absolutely unhinged. Because I am taking myself out of my mindset. And even if you are someone who has Putin derangement syndrome, even if you want Russia to lose, even if you are pro-war and believe that Ukraine should defeat Russia, why the hell will you be against oversight? Like, that doesn't even make sense. This is an open racket. Anyway, sorry. Anyone want to chime in on that before I move on to the last part?
Go ahead, Margaret.
Well, I mean, you said it all. It is, I remember the last time Bernie ran and he said, "Oh, I think Biden can win too." And I'm like, wait a minute, aren't you running against him? Aren't you supposed to be saying I'm the best guy to be the president? He's like, I like Joe Biden. He's a company guy. And so he will never diverge from Democratic Party orthodoxy at the end of the day. And we have the war party is bipartisan. We have two pro-war parties. And even if any members really want to oppose, they don't. They are afraid, they're bought off, they're compromised, they're told, well, you got to support the president for this or that reason. And at the end of the day, you get the same thing. I mean, how could we be worse off with the Republican? With this use of the public's money, when it comes to do anything that helps the people, there's always a reason about why you can't. So, yeah, but Bernie and the rest, they've exposed themselves. But you're right, the liberals are the ones leading the drive for censorship, for war. They what do they call it? Responsibility to protect, and the U.S. has an obligation to drop bombs on people to help them or something along those lines. So we have two right-wing parties, and so to talk about Democrats versus the right wing, it's like, if they have so much in common, why are you claiming that one is so much different from the other? Because they just aren't.
Extremely confusing times. Extremely confusing times because you got the left to openly support military spending. CJ, was there anything you wanted to add real quick?
Not on this topic. It's a separate topic. I was going to ask her one question about, but you can. Is it okay to insert that here?
Yeah. Ask your question because we gotta get Margaret on here. Maybe the next.
Yeah, it's real quick. I'm gonna play your video actually, Nick, and I do want to quickly get as much time as you want to spend on it, but Black voters are losing faith in Joe Biden, and I do want to kind of just address this and talk about just voters in general, but we can drill it down to what you're talking about in this video right here, Nick. And let's play it.
People are finally leaving the Democratic Party plantation, and it's about damn time. Polls show that Black Americans are losing faith in Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. My reaction to this is, what the hell took you guys so damn long? It was Joe Biden and Barack Obama that tanked Black wealth because of the way they handled the 2008 financial crisis. It was Jim Crow Joe who wrote the crime bill and created a police state that is occupying our communities. Black people are hammered by these anti-Black policies, and we never get a Black agenda because the Black community rendered themselves completely irrelevant by voting for one party at around an 80 to 90% clip. Black people need to stop listening to liberals and establish our own self-determination as a political voting bloc. We need to say loudly and boldly that without any Black agenda, there is no Black vote. And the funny thing is, this is how every single community behaves. But for some reason, Black Americans are the only people expected to just give up their vote without any sort of policy demands. Every election, there is a bidding war over the support of suburban white women. Despite the fact that white women vote for Donald Trump twice, the liberal establishment keep blaming Black men for Donald Trump winning. That's because liberals believe they own us. They believe we are obligated to support them. This is why we need a Black-led third party in order to break away from the two-party duopoly as a people.
And to Nick's point, I mean, it's a great point that he makes. So actually, I won't specify it. Any reaction to the video, and then we can kind of ask a couple of more questions about what's happening with the numbers and with the numbers for Biden and Black people. What's sort of happening in your diagnosis of that? If you can address both of those, please.
Well, it goes back to what we were saying about the polls turning in the Ukraine war. People have what have people gotten out of the Biden administration? There's all this propaganda as the most progressive president since LBJ, and he's going to cut child poverty in half, none of which was true. None of these things happened. They blamed Manchin and Sinema as if the rest of them aren't in league with the oligarchy that controls the Democratic Party. So Biden's in trouble. He never really had a base of support. The only enthusiasm was to get rid of Trump. It was never a pro-Biden movement as such. So now that he's the president, they keep talking on and on about Trump to try to gin up support for him. But Black people don't have any reason to be enthusiastic about Biden. And, that these Black Democratic operatives would allow themselves to be used in this way, it's really disgusting to me that they would praise Black women vote more than men. All women in every community, women, vote more often than men. So Black women, like every other group of women, vote more often. So trying to play off Black men and women against each other, trying to make Black men the scapegoats for the failure of the Democrats by the fact that people can see through this propaganda and see through these lives is just so shameful to me. But Black people, as the late Glenn Ford used to say, are stuck in the duopoly trap. The biggest fear for Black people is Republicans getting into office. And all you have to do is raise that specter. It's up to you. And that proves, once again, they're not really political parties. Who blames their members for their failures? The Democrats do.
It's ridiculous.
So it's up to them to do for the people. They wouldn't have to worry about this enthusiasm gap. They wouldn't have to worry about it at all. But to your point, yes, nobody blames white women for putting Trump into office, and they vote like white men do, slightly differently, but slightly. So if you wanted to blame somebody for potentially putting Trump back in office, it ought to be white women.
Yeah, and the point I made in that article is the last one I want to drive home, because we are the only people that expected just to give up our vote. They talk about, what are you gonna do? You guys got to talk about crime in order to win over the white suburban vote. Even they talk about Latino, they say you gotta have some sort of Latino platform. But then whenever Black people, even though they are still loyal to the Democrat for the most part, but the fact that even a small amount peel away and they melt down, and these are the hit pieces that are written about us. CJ, we are problematic. Why are more Black men voting Republican? And then they always say Black men are being brainwashed to shift to the right. They always scolding us. They always demanding, why are Black people, here's another, why are Black people won't vote Democrat? They put the onus on us. The onus is on us. Why won't you guys vote for us? Meanwhile, compare that to how they talk about any other demographic. Remember, they're like no anti-Asian hate bill, no Asian vote. Like that was what they were saying. And then this is the headline here.
I think Margaret wants to chime in. Go ahead, Margaret.
Yeah, it's just racism. It's just anti-Black racism, and it just shows you how corrupt the Democrats are, how little legitimacy they have. That this is their argument, that it'll be your fault if Biden doesn't win. No, it'll be your fault if Biden doesn't win. And this, when they say more Black men voting Republican, it really hasn't changed much. It's like 90% of Black people vote for Democrats. So, it's a lie. And it's a very destructive lie, and it's a reason not to vote for them. And I'm urging Black people to lose their fear of Republicans being in office. Let's look at what happens when Democrats are in office.
Right.
Trump was the nightmare, the racist who won because of his appeals to racism. We survived that. He's not president anymore. I always want to say that it's like he's not president anymore. He hasn't been for 2.5 years. I was in a captive audience, so to speak, over the weekend at a friend's home who had MSNBC on. Every program talked about Trump's indictments. They didn't talk about anything else in the country, in the world, nothing. And it's just propaganda to try to, brainwash people into voting for Biden and the Democrats, who've done absolutely nothing. Democrats have not even spent money on the so-called down ballot races. They lost 900 seats across the country while Obama was president. One of the reasons every Democrats ought to hate Hillary Clinton is she was so sure she would win. She didn't, even if the polls were correct that showed her winning. Wouldn't you say, how do we help those congressional candidates? How do we help Democrats in those state houses? What kind of outreach should we do? It was of no concern to them whatsoever. And a political party that blames its losses on its members is failed, has no legitimacy, and it should be treated as such.
Well said, Maury. We're going to get you out of here. I appreciate your time coming on RBN. Well, I just want to show you guys the difference between these headlines here, and I'll get your last thoughts, Margaret. You guys see, Democrats worry that black voters won't turn out for Biden in 2024. That's the headline. Now compare that to how they write about literally any other group. I'm not singling out Latinos, but this is what they do for everybody else. The new reality about Latino voters that Democrats must accept. The Latino surge for Republicans in the Trump era is real. Democrats need to adjust. You guys see how when they talk about anyone else, the Democrats need to adjust, fight for the votes. When it comes to black people, why are you not voting Democrat? Were you a coon? Were you selling out your own people?
You're not black. Isn't that what Biden said? If you don't vote for me, you're not black.
You're not black.
It's they know that we are the most reliably Democratic voters. And instead of treating us like that and asking, what is it you want us to do? What do you want us to do for your community, for the country? Because this is a top-down operation, because the people running for office are just errand boys and errand girls for the oligarchs, appealing to the most loyal Democrats is not something they don't want to do that. They don't want to do that because they might hear something that they don't want to hear. Well, you mean we got to do something for people? You mean the minimum wage ought to go up? We ought to do something about the homeless? No. So of course, all of this is proof of illegitimacy, and it's proof that black people need to stop.
Well said. Where can they find your amazing journalism? It's always great to have you on. This is why we like to do this every so often. So many things to talk about, but it's great to have your wisdom and insight as always. Where can they find you? Make sure you guys check out her work. I do. So any last thought?
Sure. Read blackagendareport.com. We have a new issue every Wednesday. On Friday, we have interviews, Black Agenda Radio. You can find me on Twitter. I'm still saying Twitter, Freedom Ride Blog on Twitter. Thank you both very much.
Yeah,
great
thank you. On. Make sure you guys check out Black Agenda Report here. Once again, one of my main sources, I'm not bullshitting, one of my main sources, especially when we're going foreign policy. So thank you for joining us once again, Margaret. So I'm gonna give this a few super chats, and I have to dip, CJ.
And Nick, if you don't, before you do the super chat, because I could do the super chats after you're gone. If we could take the little bit of time you have, just so I want your reaction to the Vosh video, because you debated Vosh. It's a 2-minute video. If I could play it and just get, because I don't know, the video doesn't cover enough of the thing with Vanguard for you to know really what he's saying. Unless you don't want to get into it. You feel like you're gonna go on. You feel like you're gonna go on with it or something. If you feel like there's no way you can talk about it without really going ham, then we could just save it for another stream.
We can. I think it's best probably save it too. We can add the title so it's not clickbait. Unless you want to, I apologize, but I actually got to get.
No, he's not on the thumbnail, so we don't. It's not too.
Okay, good. I don't want. Yeah, I didn't see it on thumbnail, so we can just add the title so it's not clickbait. Man, that's gonna be. I was like, there's no way that debate gonna be hard to stomach. But I guess it'd be interesting. Thank you for $5, Eric. I hope West is the main reason. And the funny thing, the only reason I know, you guys want to know, the only reason I know about the Vosh and Vanguard debate is because when the Vanguard people was talking about how they debated Vosh, and then everyone was tagging me in their tweet. Like, CJ, I don't know if you saw it. That's the only reason I know about it. Only reason I know about this debate, because people like, you guys are debating Kyle and Vosh, and you guys think you're badass, but you're dodging Nick. You guys are dodging the convo couch. Fiorella and Pasta challenged them to debate. Dodge and them, Nico challenged them to debate. These people are afraid to debate Jackson Hinkle. Fam.
Good Lord.
But they're like, we debated some weak ass social democrats. We debated Kyle Kalinske and Vosh. Aren't we so edgy? And in that tweet, because it was like, why won't Jimmy Dore debate Sam Cedar? We debated Vouch. And people were like, that means nothing. Debate Nick or shut the fuck up. And there was a ton of people tagging me. And that's the only reason I know about it. But that's gonna be a hard video.
And I haven't actually watched the debate. Because the same reason you just mentioned, there's no way I can watch a Vanguard and Vouch. Like I usually will watch a Vanguard clip because they have a guest I want to see. Is a Marianne Williamson or Kyle Kalinske is not the Vanguard, but I don't want to watch Vouch and I don't want to watch Vanguard. So there's no way I can stomach that. Like I could only do clips. So whenever we cover this tomorrow or Friday or whenever, it's just going to be clipped. Yeah. It's not going to be the whole thing. There's no way I can do. There's no way.
Thanks for the $5, Eric. Hope West is main reason Biden loses. He will have more power than Jill Stein or Susan Sarandon, and that's exactly what they're afraid of. As we said before on the channel, we have friends that said this as well. If voting for third party meant nothing, they wouldn't be finding so hard to convince you not to do it. It's just that simple. Thank for the $5, Jules. The Mansion Cinema thing is a dim trick. They had the same tactic in 2019. Blame Lieberman or Lindrau or Blanche Lincoln to kill the public option. I remember that clearly. The American people suffer from political amnesia. And there are people that think, we just vote for more progressive, vote for more liberal-minded Democrats, then will change. No, they will flip. Kristen Sinema was Green Party, and she was considered a liberal politician until they needed the numbers. If they got rid of Kristen Sinema, if you guys elected 6 more progressive politicians, there would be 6 more Democrats in purple states that will all of a sudden shift to the right. So it's hilarious how progressives would say that money in politics is a big deal that corrupts politicians, except Democrats. So let's say you got rid of Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin. Let's say you elect 5 more liberal politicians. CJ, what's stopping the corporation from buying 6 more standard Democrat politicians?
Right. Nothing.
Right. In order to make the argument that won't happen, you would then have to say that money in politics is not influential, which is literally inherently an anti-progressive. I will say social, but not even a socialist concept. Even progressives understand that money corrupt. But now the new NATO left, the new boutique left, want us to be convinced that Joe Biden and the Democrat Party is not emboldened by their money. Like, it's ridiculous. Thank you for $5, Eric. Did we ever find out if Bernie made Kyle sit out of his own wedding?
That's
couldn't be me. Couldn't be me. Like if we had Bernie Sanders on, and if I wasn't on the panel, that would be an RBN decision. Like that would be because I'm like, all right, we can have CJ and Sabby do this. Like sometimes we divide, like who's gonna interview who or whatever. That would be our damn decision. But CJ, can you imagine if we do a Nick and CJ and Bernie was like, hey nigga, we can't have Nick on this panel. What would your reaction be?
I'd be like, I guess we're not having Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders backed out the interview.
And they went to Bernie Sanders then went to me like, hey, I'm down on your show, but you got to kick CJ off. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Not only did they say yes, Crystal said, all right, Kyle, get the fuck out of here. I need this for my career. And then Kyle let it happen. That's one of the funniest fucking.
And then he marries her. Get the fuck out of here.
Man, imagine someone was like, man, I think Rome is too spicy for you guys. I don't think you should slap the shit out if you're saying something like that. But they just took it. Thank for the 199, Buckeye Fan 05. Shout out to the Montgomery Riverboat assistants.
The video. You're talking about that video that JB showed us. The video JB showed us during the meeting of the black. Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, shit. Black. I was offline. I saw that video later. Black Twitter was popping over that video. Anyway, thanks for the $2, Eric. Only blue and yellow I sport is LA Chargers gear. Very interesting. Thank you for that, Eric. I think he's referring to there's no
the
way
Ukraine colors.
Ukraine colors, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have a few more. From Eric here. Must pick the wrong letter. Should have gone with G. The G spot. Imagine the logo. And there's another one from Eric. Thank you for super chats, Eric. Stop with the divisiveness. I am all about love your neighbors and find the system. Stop attacking allies just because they're not perfect. Jimmy Dore is an ally. And that was really just weird to me. People was like, why are you guys going so hard on Marianne Williamson, a Democrat who's a Zionist? Like, there's some people complaining, like, why are you going hard on him? But meanwhile, someone who's anti-war, support third parties, supported our actions, supported other people's actions, they want us to fight him. Like, I learned that. I told you guys this a long time ago. People who give us advice don't have our best interests at heart, don't have the movement best interests at heart. They're liberals that just want to see RBN attack Jimmy Dore. Like, they were the same way. They would love to see imagine if RBN attacked Black Power Media. They would love that shit. Yeah. And there were people that, and I'm glad that Black Power Media didn't fall for this. I was on the show 2 weeks ago. There was people that was trying to pit Black Power Media and RBN against each other. You guys seen that? I know you guys seen those comments.
I had to block that person who used to be in our community. It was sad that I had to block that person. That was ridiculous. I was like, what?
Yeah, not only that one person not only was that one person, but I seen multiple attempts at trying to drive wedges between Black Power Media and RBN. I seen multiple attempts at that, and I have no tolerance for that. I don't, and we can't assume, especially in this time where there's all these fucking infiltrators. We gotta be very skeptical about what's going on in our movement. When I see people saying, "Oh, you can't have this person. No, you can't talk to these people. You gotta just no. That's weird. That's awkward." And there are people that done that. There are people that try to get us to fight Convo Cal, people trying to get us attack Black Power Media. They always trying to get us attack our allies. Meanwhile, they want us to be easy on Democrats. That's weird to me. Because these same people, really, I swear to God, I know shit. I got good memory, guys. The same people that got upset at us for going too hard on a Democratic politician, Marianne Williamson, are the same people that say, well, why aren't you attacking Jimmy Dore? That shit's sus. That shit's sus, fam. Let's move on. They want us to go harder on a comedian compared to a politician. like, do you guys don't think that's sus?
Unserious.
Yeah. So, and I'm not saying, and we said this many times, that's why we have no tolerance for people who pretend to have amnesia. Jimmy is not above criticism. We criticize him quite a few times. That's why I don't even buy the narrative that we don't criticize him, because we have before. People just mad because we're not doing it in the Vanguard, Sam Cedar, scumbag. Like, I'm not going to allow you guys to fucking lie and bullshit. But anyway, let's move on. Eric left two more. Congress is only properly funded assisted living senior center. Congress is the only properly funded assisted living senior center in America. That's a tongue twister for me. But yeah, absolutely. Regarding Dianne Feinstein and Mitch McConnell being told to do their job. I hope people realize they're just puppets. People actually think they vote for people who read laws.
They don't. Read them
not only people, there's a story where people like Dianne Feinstein is told who to vote for because they all told who to vote for. It just Dianne is more obvious about it. Anyway, thank for $5, Eric. If people just like young, he's sharp, right? Kamala Harris is young and sharp, right? Pick a young and sharp Democrat. They'll be just as brain dead and just as much of a puppet as Joe Biden or Mitch McConnell. Anyway, we got a few more. We appreciate the super chat come out, guys. Any of you plan on reading Jenk's new book, Justice is Coming? There's no way he's writing that. Or are you waiting for the movie? Like, until I see otherwise, I'm gonna assume this is a parody super chat because there's no way he is writing a book that is that fucking cringe. So
wait, what is it called? Justice is coming. I wonder if it's real. I might Google it when we're done just to see if that's true or not. Just to see.
Coming. Justice is coming. That's very fucking.
I mean, from his perspective, from the perspective of Jank, if you're Jank, you would think
that's a good point.
You're an expert in that field. You would think that if you're
the reason why I say that, and to that point, CJ, the reason why I say that because if Rome wrote a book called Justice is Coming, I would be like, damn, what is he talking about? There about be some revolutionary shit in there. Imagine if Rome wrote a book called Justice is Coming, but Jank, you're a fucking pro-war Democrat is writing a book called Justice is Coming. He probably talking about Trump. I promise you that's some Trump derangement syndrome shit right there, which is why I stopped at the idea.
Nick, I'm gonna have to tell you, this is an actual book, sir.
Oh,
this is an actual book.
It's about Trump, isn't it?
It says something about how progressives. Let me put it on the screen. It says how progressives are going to, and it's cut off. I'm trying to click. Oh, it's on Amazon. It's on. Yeah, Cenk Uygur. How progressives are going to take over this country, and America's going to love.
Oh my fucking God. Oh my God.
I guess he's trying to bring back some of the old Bernie Sanders industrial complex viewers that they lost, I guess, but go ahead. It's real.
Once again, the reason why I thought that was a joke, because if Rome wrote a book called Justice is Coming, I'd be interesting to see what he's talking about. Okay, he'd be talking about some revolutionary shit. Jenkins said justice is coming. The progressives are going to save us. We're going to have justice because the progressives, the one who vote for war, is going to save us.
Laughable. That's so laughable.
Holy fucking shit, dude. Like, that's pure comedy. That's pure comedy.
Yeah. It's
Thanks
a real
for 15
book,
bucks. Vax is straightforward. Basic cell bio. RNA is an instruction set for cells. See, this is what,
don't read that. Don't read that. I forgot.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
Read that out loud.
Yeah, we gotta be careful.
We can put it on the screen, but don't read that. Yeah, don't read that.
I'm glad he called me. But in general, that's why the RFK thing is very annoying, because when we start talking about mRNA and all that stuff, that's when I'm like, I'm lost. Like I don't know anything about that shit, fam. That's why I want Robert Malone not to be censored. I want him to debate someone. So Robert Malone, who talk about this stuff, who I don't know anything about, I want him to debate a professional. I am pro-discourse. And that's why I'm pro-discourse, because I want to be able to make the decision for myself, who's right and who's wrong. Meanwhile, liberals are like, no, we got to censor Robert Malone. We got to censor RFK. That is completely counterproductive to what my interests are. Because I want to see these people talk this stuff out. Now, regarding to the RFK thing, I don't know much about Robert Malone, but RFK really harmed his credibility on these issues. That's why you guys see I don't know that much about this stuff. So he can easily trick me. So because I see him lie about Israel-Palestine, now I don't trust anything he said. Like, because as someone who don't know that much about vaccines, I'm like, I need another source, motherfucker. I need another Great Barrington Declaration person to explain this. Because I can't abide by this guy no more. I think we almost caught up. I appreciate the show out, the showing, guys. Thanks for the $2 from Eric, who left quite a few super chats. Show Eric some love in the chat. Defund the empire. That is our politics. Oh yeah, I think I caught up here. There we go. I think we caught up because here's stuff again. Yeah, so there we go. Let me check the bottom again just to make sure there ain't no new super chats. I just see a super sticker. So I appreciate all the super chat guys. I see left. This is a friend based on. This is a friend. Big shout out to Les for the $5. Time to means test member of Congress who've been in office the last 20 plus years since they got us in trillions of debt rating lowered to A++. Yeah, I remember one of you beautiful RBN motherfuckers covered that. I didn't cover it. One of you guys covered it. Maybe Savvy or CJ. But yeah, our credit rating was lowered, and if this happened for any other president got their credit lower like this, they will get hammered by the media. It'll be over for them. Meanwhile, liberals are still pretending that Bidenomics is working as Biden getting our country degraded in debt rating. So if you want to ask me how that shit works, I'm gonna tell you I don't know how that shit works because our system is fucking fraudulent. But you capitalists are in charge, and our rating got lowered. So it's your fucking fault. Your policies are trash. That's how the same way you guys would react to that happened to a socialist country. So that's how I'm reacting to you guys in general. So with that, I personally have to wrap. CJ, anything else you have before we sign off?
Yeah, I'll just play the closeout video, but maybe tomorrow you're back, or do you want to tell people when the next time, or if you got guests? Because I think you said
I have Pasta joining me at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Let's call it the Nick and Pasta debate because we got a few disagreements we got to hammer out. It's not going to be super contentious. Me and Pasta are friends. We're friends, but there are a lot of disagreements that we got to lean towards.
When is that? It's 9 p.m.
It's Nick at night. It'll be for our Nick at
Wednesday. Okay, Wednesday.
The Nick and Pasta debate. So that's what I have coming up. I think I can join I'll join for RBN Live tomorrow because there are a few stories I didn't get to as well. There's this video of Vivek. He's like the third leading Republican candidate now, and you guys know I have a few right wing people who like me, despite the fact that I'm like openly Marxist and socialist, because they love my critiques of the Democratic Party and they love that I call out war. There are a lot of anti-war right wingers who follow me, and a few of them like, hey Nick, have you heard about Vivek? Hey, Vivek, this new upside Republican prospect, and everything I've seen from this motherfucker, he's a bootlicking little weasel that's trying to be a Trump cabinet member. I don't understand why anyone's trying to do. So tomorrow, there's a propaganda report I'm gonna do where Vivek is like, we need young Americans to pass a civics test in order to vote. So essentially, if you don't repeat U.S. propaganda, if you don't memorize U.S. propaganda, you are not allowed to fucking vote. Like, this is the kind of unhinged policies that come from the capitalist class. So we'll cover that tomorrow. Once again, he's a fucking little weasel. I don't understand why anyone finds him interesting at all. But anyway, that week I'll be back on Tuesday. We cover that tomorrow and a few other stories. But that's all I have. Let me just Black Power Media. I'm gonna try to get something with them here very soon. Because anyway, sorry. Go ahead, CJ.
I was just gonna say, since we were talking about tomorrow, for those that missed it, we'll probably throw in the Vanguard story that we didn't cover today, and then the virtue signaling of climate change by none other than Bernie Sanders. You know, that video you commented on. So those are two stories.
That'd be good.
Also, those two stories we'll also cover tomorrow. But go ahead. You were going to say something about Black Power Media. My bad.
But I have an official date for that here soon.
There we go.
I was on Black Power Media.
Maybe take this out. There we go.
Yeah. I was on Black Power Media 2 weeks ago. You guys should check that out. We had a great conversation, and we want to do more of these collaborations between us. So that should come. I'm gonna try and get that set up sometime next week. I told them I had to wait till after the activist summit, so that's coming up here very soon. Dr. West had to reschedule for later this month. If you guys wondering why we didn't do the second, he doing a lot of traveling campaign events. I don't remember the exact date, but I'm thinking the 17th. Don't quote me on that, but we rescheduled that later this month. So that's all I have coming up. CJ,
that's next week, that's sometime next week. Yeah, it's a week. That's a week from this upcoming Thursday. I think that's the date because I remember the text. I think it did say the 17th. Can you repeat what you said about Black Power Media though? The first part of it, it was glitchy and we couldn't see.
My bad.
You at all. Just the first few seconds.
Black Power Media probably join us here sometime next week. I was on their show. I think that was the week of the General Strike Summit, not General Strike Summit, but Labor Organizing Summit. So that was the Wednesday of. So make sure you guys check that out. We're gonna have a collab video as well here soon. Passed on at Nick at Night, RBN Live tomorrow. That's all I have for you guys. I have more guest announcements here soon. A few people I'm working on booking on. A lot of great guests coming up on RBN. So make sure you guys subscribe and like. So I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Absolutely. All right, Nick. And then all I have is this outro video. It was going to be one of the topics, but I think this outro video will cover it. Where is it at? Add to the stream right here. And this outro video is friend of the show, Nico House. He's talking about the AOC story, AOC going after Cornel West. So I guess we can make this a very short mini segment since we were going to cover it anyway. But I'll play the video, I'll give a comment, and then we're out. So let's play Nico House talking about Cornel West. And this is about an article, and it was titled, Cornel West is too big a risk for AOC or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And she basically is saying this is too big of a risk right now, and Cornel West needs to pull back. So let's listen to the video.
Although AOC agrees with much of what Cornel West has advocated for in the past, she still thinks his candidacy is too big of a risk for the Democratic Party. Now, AOC even goes on to commend his service, his lifelong service, right before she then says that given the Electoral College and the real risk of a Republican presidency, because that would be so much different than Joe Biden's, right, that Cornel West's run would just be too risky. But it's fucking democracy, huh? Now, one would think that because AOC and Cornel West both worked on Bernie Sanders' campaign, because that campaign supposedly represented both of their ideologies, that she would get behind him, or at the bare minimum, not undermine his campaign. But stabbing her political allies in the back is kind of AOC's MO, so I'm not really all that surprised. But why is she more concerned with the Biden win than advocating for progressive policy through conversations that are started by candidates like Dr. West, despite AOC knowing the fact that Biden has zero intentions on passing a single progressive policy, and in fact, even lied about the policy he said he would pass to earn her endorsement the first go around. In case she forgot, like, what's the point of fearing a Republican president if you're going to get neocon policies anyway with no resistance with Biden? The truth is, AOC and the Democrats attack independent left-leaning candidates like Dr. West because those candidates are a mirror to how fickle and superficial the promise of the Democratic Party actually is. And those candidates do that by running left of the Democrats and then daring the Democrats to be who they claim they are. And Democrats are, of course, worried that when people figure out that they aren't who they claim they are, they'll lose votes. Of course they will. So it's easier to attack, defame, and smear other candidates and people than to actually pass the policies that they claim they want to pass for the people.
So yeah, that was Nico House. Shout out Nico House. I'm gonna pause this in the background. And then I guess I could bring up the accompanying article that you see in the background there. To read a little bit on it. I didn't plan on this being the segment, but we did have this listed. So let's read it. And it's from Newsweek. I don't know if the original article is from Newsweek, but we're reading this version of it from Newsweek. But here we go. All right. So let's read a little bit on it. Oh, wow. You can listen to this article too, huh? But I'll read it. I wonder what kind of voice it is. Let's see. Is it playing? I don't hear anything. So I'll read it. Until it's playing. But anyway, since his announcement of a 2024 presidential bid
Just
in
a quick
June,
word from our sponsor. Continue your journey at
Oh, it took that long for it to catch up. So no, I'm not gonna, because they have sponsors and commercials. Since his announcement of a 2024 presidential bid in June, supporters of a third-party candidate, Cornel West, have framed his long shot campaign as a historic opportunity to elevate progressive ideas they felt establishment figures like President Joe Biden have long ignored. However, even close allies like Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are appearing reluctant to step behind him, saying the temptation of a left-wing challenge to Biden is not worth the risk of a second Donald Trump presidency. Speaking to The Hill, so I believe the original article was on The Hill. Speaking to The Hill over the weekend, the progressive New York congresswoman and close philosophical ally of West expressed reservations about his campaign after a recent decision to change his affiliation to the Green Party, a reprise of former candidate Jill Stein's ill-fated run for the president in 2016 that helped Trump win the White House. Now, of course, all of this phrasing that they're giving, make it like Trump help Trump win the White House, is ridiculous. And this is a corporate outlet, so let's make sure we keep that in mind. They must stay in the framing of the approved Overton window of the red-blue game. Quote, this is AOC. I think he has a very long record of service and academic thought leadership, end quote. AOC said of West, and she went on to say, quote, I think just right now, given the Electoral College, it's difficult to square the very real threat of a Republican presidency with the risk of giving up the very small margins of electoral votes needed to ensure that President Biden wins, end quote. So AOC has fully accepted and is a full-blown Democratic shield, not a, a left wing. She is squarely part of the establishment, and she is out. Just think, just 4 years ago, or coming up on 4 years ago, she was out stumping for Bernie Sanders, and now she's refusing to stomp for Cornel West, and instead is already put her weight behind the corporate clown Jim Crow Joe. I'll read a little more and then we'll close out here. Even close allies of the 2024 presidential candidate Cornel West left, like AOC, right, are appearing. I read that part. Sorry, everybody. This is where I should be starting. While West, an academic and philosopher with no experience in elected office, has always been considered a long shot, his candidacy comes amid a highly polarized electoral environment in which experts say a third party, who are experts, and how can you be an expert in this, candidate should draw a sizable share of the independent vote, denying Democrats the swing votes they have traditionally needed to win. The environment is so fraught that the group like Third Way, a center-left, they're not center-left, think tank that has pushed for both parties to return to ideological middle, have criticized efforts by other groups like No Labels to promote a third-party effort for the presidency, arguing that any additional candidates in the race would serve only as a spoiler to benefit Trump's benefit, I should say. And we can end the article there. So there you have AOC. There you have AOC out stumping for Democrats, and proudly has taken on the role of establishment leader in this sort of narrative that we're playing. Oops, what's happening with Twitter here? 1 second. I need to go back to Twitter. Okay, there we go. All right, I must have had something typed wrong. So we're gonna get out of here, but I do want to play an outro video. Actually, let's see if anything breaking before I get to that video. Because the time of my show, there is quite a few things that break during this time frame. So maybe I'll just take a quick spin through to make sure it's not anything all too important. All too important, not that one, not this one. All right, I think I'm going to go ahead with this one from Ben Norton. This is a video, Government Documents the Atomic Bombing, because I believe this is the anniversary. So let's watch, and he'll take us out.
It's very common for Western governments and media outlets to tell the rest of the world it should be very afraid of North Korea and its nuclear weapons, or to warn everyone that Iran could one day soon have nukes. But the reality is that there is only one country in human history that has used nuclear weapons against a civilian population, and not once, but twice. And that, of course, was the United States. On the 6th and 9th of August, 1945, the US military dropped nuclear bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Around 200,000 Japanese civilians were killed in this nuclear attack. Now, still today, nearly 80 years later, it is still very common to hear officials in the United States and teachers in the US education system claim that the US military had to nuke Japan in order to end World War II. I studied in the United States as a child. I went to public school, and my teachers over many years told me this. However, it is false. If you do very basic study, if you read the history of World War II, you can find that in reality, it was not necessary for the United States to bomb Japan with these nuclear bombs that killed 200,000 people. This was a political decision taken by the United States aimed at the Soviet Union. This was the first act of the Cold War. And the reality was that the Soviet Union was on the verge of liberating Japan, of overthrowing the Japanese fascist regime that had been allied with Nazi Germany. And the United States was afraid that if the Soviets defeated Japanese fascism, then Japan, the post-fascist government in Japan, it would be created later on, would become an ally of the Soviet Union and would go socialist. And of course, right immediately at the end of World War II, the US launched the Cold War against the Soviet Union and against socialism all around the world. Now, this might sound like a controversial opinion, but it's not an opinion. It's actually a documented fact that we can see reflected in US government documents, and many mainstream historians in the United States at top universities have written about this history. This is the real history of the US nuclear bombing of Japan. It was a political decision. And today I'm going to look through the evidence, including from the US government itself, the US Department of War, which at that time, that's what it was called. Today, it's known as the Department of Defense, the Pentagon. It changed its name in the 1940s after World War II. The US Department of War published a strategic bombing survey in 1946 that reviewed the impact of the US bombing in World War II. And that US government document admitted that the US nuclear bombing of Japan was not necessary to end the war. Japan was already going to surrender by the end of 1945. Instead, the US bombing again was aimed at the Soviet Union. But before that, I want to also briefly look at comments that were made by the US president who succeeded the president who dropped the atomic bombs. So, of course, the president who nuked Japan was Harry Truman. But his successor, Dwight Eisenhower, was a top US military general, and Eisenhower also oversaw the US military's operations in Germany and France in World War II. And it's not that well known that in reality, Eisenhower wrote a memoir in 1963 in which he criticized the US nuking of Japan, and he admitted that it was not necessary for the US to drop the atomic bomb on Japan.